across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and as always, another quiet day. Not much to talk about. I'd probably tune out if I were you. No, really don't. We have lots and lots and lots to talk about, as you've been hearing also on Mike's show as well. Don't forget, if you miss any of the show, you can go to my YouTube page, and we've cunningly called it the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, so you've got no excuses for not finding it, and you can hit subscribe, and you'll never have to miss a thing. Now, we're going to be talking, of course, more about Palestine, because, of course, you know, Prime Minister's focus has got to be on something that's happening thousands of miles away and not stuff that's actually happening in our country. But now some of Britain's top lawyers have warned Keir Starmer that his pledge to recognise a Palestinian state risks breaking international law. And we know how much he cares about international law, rather more than our domestic laws as a general rule we usually find. But the intervention has been signed by 40 members of the House of Lords, including former Supreme Court judges and others. They say the Palestinian state would not meet the criteria for recognition as set out under an international treaty from 1933. Meanwhile, victims of the October 7th atrocities, of course, including British-Israeli victim, we spoke about on the show yesterday, have hit out of the PM and said there could be no recognition of a Palestinian state until every single hostage is free. Interesting, actually, the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, you never want to be on the same side as Mark Carney. You know you're in the wrong. He says they are going to be giving recognition to a Palestinian state, but one of the conditions, not a condition from Keir Starmer, is that all the hostages must be set free and Hamas are no longer in power. And it's a small matter of there being democratic reforms, you know, so there actually is a democracy. That said, are we entirely sure that the people of Gaza, if given the chance to vote for different parties, would choose the Lib Dems, I don't know, over Hamas? You want to be pretty sure about that before you do it, don't you? Anyway, we'll be talking more about that. Also going to be talking about Mohammed Fahir Ahmaz, who has been found guilty of assaulting 2 female police officers at Manchester Airport last July. Ahmaz was found guilty of punching PC Lydia Ward in the face, knocking her down and breaking her nose. The 20-year-old was also convicted of assaulting PC Ellie Cook and the earlier assault of a member of the public in the Starbucks at the airport. However, the jury was unable to decide whether Ahmaz and his brother Mohammed Ahmad also assaulted a male officer. Prosecutors are now seeking a retrial on those counts, and that, as I'll explain, has quite a lot of repercussions for our ability to discuss this case. Plus, we're going to be talking about the thousands of passengers across the UK, including my own child, who've suffered travel chaos and continuing to suffer travel chaos after an air traffic control failure grounded planes at the start of the school summer holidays yesterday. Of course they did. That's just what happens in this country. It's not often I end up agreeing with the likes of Michael O'Leary of Ryanair, saying people should be sacked when it's not him. But he's completely right in this case in terms of air traffic control here. Lots to talk about, and joining me for all the chat, as always on a Thursday, delighted to say, is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. A very good morning to you, sir. Good morning. So there's nothing happening there whatsoever, so we may as well pack up and just go to the pub. I've said this, I mean, literally every day since we've been on air for 9 years. Another quiet news day. There's no such thing as quiet summer anymore. Remember last summer? I mean, this time last year,
we're making stories. Oh no, we were taking stories that wouldn't have made the headlines.
We were making stories up, weren't we, about the protests, weren't we? I do want to talk about Palestine, but I do also have my questions about this, and I'll explain why it is about this and not perhaps a topic that you to talk about, and as I'm sure Mike Graham explained to you earlier as well, we're going to talk about some of Britain's top lawyers that say warning Keir Starmer that recognising a Palestinian state risks breaking international law. I want to know what your reaction is to that. Do you not care? Is it irrelevant? Is it quite ironic that this man, who basically does everything, he says because of international law, we can't stop the boats because of international law, we can't deport people because of international law. Lord Hermer, as Attorney General, says, you can't pick and choose, it's not pick and mix, international law is international law. Apart from when it involves Israel or Palestine. Funny that. But give us a call on the 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222, and you can get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. So let's talk about this. But then I also want to talk about the Manchester Airport attack and those convictions. But obviously there's still a lot of legal considerations around that. But does it matter if a recognition of a Palestinian state is in breach of a 1933 convention, which apparently we never even signed up to?
Well, it does, given the history of Keir Starmer and Lord Hermer. And I detect his fingers all over the statements that have come out, where they want to quote international law, and that's their excuse for doing things. This particular convention is the Montevideo Convention, signed in 1933. We didn't sign up to it because it was primarily put together for recognition of different countries around in South America and elsewhere, hence the name. But it's got some very clear principles that should be applied whenever you're recognising a country. And one of the clear principles plays directly into Keir Starmer's hands. It is being able to define geographically the country that's there. And of course, he knows how to define a woman. So that's why he has gone down the state that he's in, because he's using the same principles.
Maybe he could recognise a trans-Palestinian state. They could just simply identify as a Palestinian state and he would believe it.
Well, see, we've got a solution now.
There we are. See, look, talkTV. I mean, genuinely, this is public service broadcasting at its best, solving one international crisis at a time.
I've got a solution for their election as well that he put into the yes. Well, we've got Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana setting up their party, and they're so pro-Palestinian. We should send them there so that they can ensure that true democracy is applied across the region.
They should absolutely go.
I think that would be their civic duty and our national duty to do that.
Absolutely, they should go to Gaza. I'm happy to do a crowdfunder for. I'll pay it myself. Go to the Savings Account. I'll pay for their ticket. But yeah, this treaty again. It lays out 4 key criteria for statehood in international law, and we touched a lot of this earlier in the week, pointing out, Palestinian state, where is it? Yes. Who runs it? So to be a state, you have to possess a permanent population. Oh, wait a minute, so not a refugee population? Well, that'll end all that aid then, won't it? Because if you're not a refugee, I mean, these are people who've been born like two generations in this state, but apparently are still refugees. A defined territory, again, we've got the West Bank, we've got Gaza. They're not even, joined up state, but pieces of land. What is that territory? And what has been offered previously, which is 95% of that territory by Israel, and they've offered 5% of Israel in return for the 5% that they're not going to get for their other territory they claim. That's been rejected twice now, I think, twice by the Palestinian Authority, whoever's in charge that week. You have to have a government. Well, OK, you can't. You also have to have the capacity to enter into relations with other states. Well, we don't have any dealings with Hamas because they're a prescribed terrorist organisation. Palestinian Authority, the supposed moderates in this, big fans of Fatah.
Well, they are Fatah. Yasser Arafat.
They are Fatah, exactly.
Arafat.
The moderates in this scenario are not the people we would call moderates. No. So you've got 2 massively extremist groups. One is a prescribed terrorist organisation. Neither has held an election for 20 years. We don't know what the actual state is. Bearing in mind, they claim the state of Israel as the Palestinian state. Well, that's not negotiable, is it? That's not going to happen. So Israelis are not going to go, oh, sorry, you're right, fair enough, we'll leave this territory. It's not going to happen. So on all of those bases, there is no Palestinian state.
Correct.
So why on earth is our Prime Minister wasting his time holding an emergency cabinet meeting, pontificating and prancing about on the world stage, making statements, when we are dealing with 1,000,001 crises at home that he should be dealing with? Because last time I looked, he was elected Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and not Prime Minister of the sodding Middle East.
Because he's pandering to his backbenchers and what he considers as populist opinion.
It's an outrageous allegation against the Prime Minister.
And people also fail to recognise that the last time there was elections, it led to a civil war. It wasn't a civil war against Israel. It was a civil war between Hamas and Fatah. Who control the West Bank. And therefore, they don't like each other. They don't get on well together. And then again, you look at the relations...
It's not going to be a Tory Lib Dem coalition, is it?
No, I don't think so. And then you look at what goes on elsewhere in the Middle East, and the Hamas grew out of the Egyptian Brotherhood. That's why Egypt, instead of opening the aid routes in from Egypt into Gaza, built a bigger wall and made it wider.
Muslim Brotherhood are nutters too.
Oh,
I've been to Egypt lots of times since the Muslim Brotherhood have taken charge. Sorry, let's call them what they are. They're religious fanatics. I mean,
nutters is better. Yes.
I mean, it's probably Islamophobic, isn't it? No, I mean it's not. It's just a particular strand of Islamism, which is very different from someone being a Muslim. the reason why we didn't recognise the Palestinian state, but I think 140 countries have. But we'd only be the second country, well, now Canada in the G7 after France, that would recognise its state because we're supposed to be grown-up countries that deal in realpolitik. And again, Benjamin Netanyahu, love him or hate him, at the end of the day, he has to deal with realpolitik. When you are defending your borders against, let's be honest, savages, because people who want to rape and murder and pillage and kill children and take hostages and the like, and will happily sacrifice their own children to do that, are savages. They're not part of normal human Western civilization. That's for sure. When you're dealing with that on your border, you wouldn't be in favour of a two-state solution. But by the way, neither is Hamas and neither is the Palestinian Authority. They're in favour of a one-state solution, which is just Palestine and no Israel.
And you have to remember, Palestine, everyone says Palestine existed beforehand, and they bring out all these maps and everything else. It was a British construct for administration purposes whenever the British rule had it. And I find it fantastic whenever I see Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland turning around and saying they don't want any British influence in anything else, and Sinn Féin are then turning around saying they want Palestine, which is a British construct historically. But they refuse to go then back to the land of Judea when you start to then go really back in history and then fail to recognise that the Jewish faith existed hundreds and hundreds of years before the Muslim faith came in. So these people that are in the region are not from that region.
It's just an load of absolute. The whole thing is based on absolute nonsense. And again, most of the people debating this on Twitter and calling me a Mossad-paid whore, baby killer, genocidal. Apparently, I'm going to end up in The Hague. I got all that this week as well. It's great. Give me a day, I'll put it in my diary. It's going to be a lot of paperwork, isn't it?
It is.
I'm not making light, but genuinely, they are just, most of these people. I read down their Twitter feed. They are so unbelievably ignorant of the most basic facts. You don't have to agree with me on Israel, but can we at least agree on some facts? But it was really interesting, I thought, and we mentioned on the show yesterday the freed British Israeli hostage Emily Damari. She's the one who lost her two fingers because they were shot off, and then she was basically sewn up by a Palestinian surgeon who may or may not have deliberately left her with nerve damage to cause her pain, and a bullet in her thigh as well. Eventually freed after God knows how long behind bars, including being held in a 2 metre by 2 metre cage along with 7 other people, including an 8-year-old girl. I mean, we're talking about 6 other people, an 8-year-old girl, absolutely horrific treatment of that, as if they were animals. And she basically cried shame on the Prime Minister for recognition of Israel, of Palestine, and said it risks rewarding terror. It was a moral failure, and he was on the wrong side of history. I couldn't agree with her more.
Well, Hamas has congratulated Keir Starmer on making that statement. There was a very interesting statement I read from answered a question I read from a former head of intelligence, Saudi intelligence, and he had been ambassador to the UK and ambassador to the United States. And he was asked whether he would go in and be able to influence Hamas to comply with what had been said. And his statement was, well, why would Hamas listen to me? They haven't done anything so far. They haven't listened to God, and therefore it is God that should judge them.
Oh, well, interesting. Well, I thought was, again, possibly the most significant thing this week actually has actually been, we've got Steve Witkoff, the US envoy, he's in Israel right now and is likely, we understand, to go into Gaza with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. But it is interesting actually, it's the Arab League, across the board, Saudis, Egypt, Qatar and others have all agreed, all signed up, basically calling on Hamas to down weapons, to free the hostages and to agree to a ceasefire. I think that's quite telling. I think that is quite telling. That will have more influence than anything Keir Starmer has done. Let's talk about things back at home, because you know what? We matter too. Let's talk about the Manchester airport attack last summer. Bearing in mind, the first images we had from this attack on police officers was actually an image of a police officer attacking a man who was lying prone on the ground, still on the ground, head down, and the first images we saw was video footage of a police officer, PC Marsden, kicking him in the head, stamping on his head. Absolutely shocking. We discussed it at the time, discussed it with lots of police officers. Richard Tice was just on Mike Graham's show saying he'd always defended the police officers in this, the context. And yes, we always said we needed to know the context, but I spoke to a lot of police officers on air and off air who said, whatever the provocation, your job as a police officer, and you're trained in it, you're a trained military man, you can lose it, and a member of the public loses it, it's understandable. But police and soldiers are trained not to lose it. That's part. Once you've restrained someone, you shouldn't. the context, and we know that there will now be no charges. We know this some months ago, no charges against the police for this, although he's facing misconduct charges within the police and may well lose his job if he is found to have committed a wrongdoing. But the reason why he had acted the way he did, as it emerged in the trial, was because of the claim of what we then saw when another video, or the full video was shown to us. Interesting that the first video that was shown to us was an incredibly small excerpt, and we saw a longer video of what had actually happened in full. Now, as a result of that, but also as a result only of reform threatening a private prosecution of two brothers, we actually got prosecutions. Now, yesterday, Mohammed Fahir Ahmad was found guilty of assaulting two female police officers at Manchester Airport, knocking PC Lydia Ward down, knocking her down, breaking her nose, hitting her in the face. He was also convicted of assaulting PC Ellie Cook. And he also was convicted of assaulting a member of the public at the airport Starbucks, where he punched him and headbutted him. Now, the jury was unable to decide whether Ahmad and his brother, Mohammed Ahmad, who's his 26-year-old, so 6-year older brother, had assaulted the male police officer. They didn't come to a conclusion on that. The prosecution say that they will be seeking a new trial on that. That means we can't ask for calls on this. And I know you want to have your say, but legally speaking, contempt of court would be a criminal prosecution against us and you if we did anything or said anything that could prejudice that trial. But we can talk about the assaults on the female police officers. It was all contained in that video. We saw it clearly. I'm amazed that the jury took that long to find them guilty on the charges against the women. It was there before us. The claims from this brother was, I didn't realise they were police officers. I didn't realise they were women. A perfectly good character. I don't know about you. If I get into a little beef with somebody in a cafe, and apparently there was a claim that some man had been bothering his mother on the plane who was picking her up. I'm not sure I'd even know how to headbutt someone, but apparently he knew how to throw a punch and hit this man. He knew how to throw a punch to hit two police officers down, and he knew how to headbutt someone. Not the innocent character that he claimed to be. When that video was first put out, when we thought he was the victim of an assault himself, by the police, and we had the likes of Paul Wall, the local Rochdale MP, we had Yvette Cooper, we had lots of people coming out and saying, this is a terrible, terrible thing, and these men are poor innocent men who've been horribly attacked. Unprovoked attack.
It was shocking, the response of government ministers and MPs on what was clearly a snippet of a video, and they could not put it into context of what happened. And for the Home Secretary to come out with that's unforgivable. And I've looked at the videos that have come out with the court case and everything else, and I'm gobsmacked that like you, it took the jury so long to come up with their conclusion, and B, it was a majority decision. It wasn't a unanimous decision. And of course, looking at what was coming out of the statements from the convicted, and looking at the facts that happened from that you can see that was presented to the jury.
This wasn't a he said, she said.
It wasn't a he said, she said.
But also this whole idea, police officer, I didn't realise they were police officers, I just felt I was assaulted.
He was looking at police officers before.
But also, you've just punched someone in front of a crowded Starbucks in an airport. No CCTV or police in an airport, right? You just punched someone in the face and headbutted them, right? Are you then surprised that police might then turn up to arrest you? And in full uniform. They weren't plainclothes officers.
And there were police officers in uniform with their caps on, which said quite clearly said police,
I mean, there's just
that he could see in his field of vision.
Clearly, well, most of the jury saw through that. But again, we will be having another trial, we expect, regarding the allegation of assault against both brothers on the male officer, who a lot of this is focused on. But it is just reading up. Again, I find it astonishing that it took so long for the CPS to bring charges, and they wouldn't have brought. I swear, if it wasn't for the public outcry, they wouldn't have brought charges. But let's just go back to July last year, when the Labour MP Paul Wall, he's an old colleague, he's an old journalist, he's an old colleague of mine actually, and he was only elected 3 or 4 weeks earlier to the Rochdale seat, and he said there was deep concern about footage shot when we only saw the video of the stamping on the head. He said that the family of this man were deeply traumatised, and the family had appealed for for calm following protests. Because remember, there were protests outside the local police station. People were claiming Islamophobia and good knows what. He said, it's clear they are deeply traumatised by what happened. This is a hard-working Rochdale family, some of whose members are police officers themselves, and are therefore particularly shocked at what they've witnessed. The family also want me to make it crystal clear they have no political agenda, do not condone political violence, and do not want to take part in any protests. They want me to appeal for calm. I mean, just extraordinary. The blatant lies that were told by these brothers to their MP, to their lawyer, they were there, they know the context of the first original video. They knew what they had done. They've just been, well, one of them has just been convicted of assaulting 3 different people, and there they were sitting there like butter wouldn't melt in their mouths. Remember that picture of them on the sofa?
They've been groomed to do everything. That was clear. You could see it.
They chose to do it.
Yeah, they chose to do it. And he was out of control. And he's been convicted for being out of control and sentencing.
The terrible thing is, the police officer who, I mean, I've still got very big issues with what the male police officer did. Now, there's no criminal proceedings related to that, but there is a police investigation into his conduct. And even knowing the full context, I've got more sympathy for that police officer. Even at the full context, I think the final stamp was unacceptable.
Yes. But if we recognise what happened beforehand, and I have to be very careful what I say here, he had just, he was in a very violent, fast-moving event that was going on. He had just lost 2, possibly 3 colleagues, and he didn't know the extent of their injuries. And they were armed officers, and therefore he didn't know what was going to happen to the control of the weapons. And he still had someone who was not responding to direction to desist, and he had to stop him. An armed officer, where you think there's going to be a threat, their other option is to pull their weapon out and shoot them. Now, that you could have probably justified if he did not stop and you thought that it was a threat to life, and he didn't know what had happened to his other colleagues. He didn't know how badly injured they were, and this individual was resisting, and he was now almost by himself trying to deal with this.
I mean, again, I've got a lot more sympathy. I have a lot more sympathy, but certainly, I mean, when I first saw that original video, I immediately called police officer friends of mine and spoke to our contacts on the show and said, what do you think? Because I can't judge. I'm not a police officer. I've not been in that scenario. And to a man and a woman, they all said they thought it was unacceptable. And most of them agreed, even after they'd seen the full video, that it had gone too far. But again, am I bothered about it? No. Not so much.
But if the police officer thought his life was at risk,
then it's different.
It's different.
I completely understand that. Perhaps again, but that shocking isolated video clip who got a hold of that? Who put that out? And why was that? Why was that whole message about? And why did the CPS not prosecute sooner? When it comes to a man now convicted of those 3 very serious assaults, hasn't been sentenced yet. They have been remanded behind bars anyway, both men. But we are looking at something akin maximum 5 years realistically, which I think a lot of people would regard for assaulting 3 people, including 2 women police officers, is absolutely not enough.
Oh, very much so. And violent crime, I think the government needs to review that. Maybe call an emergency meeting in the Cabinet.
We should call an emergency meeting in the Cabinet about that, shouldn't we?
And increase the sentences.
I would love to ask for your thoughts on this, but I'm not allowed to because of the contempt of court rules, because there is another pending trial. Once that is over, whatever the verdict is regarding the 2 allegations against the 2 brothers involving the alleged assault of the male police officer, PC Marsden, then we can discuss it in full. But I hope you'll understand I can't take your calls on that as much as I would like to. 10:26 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. I want to hear your thoughts on all the other topics we are going to be talking about there, in particular the Palestinian state. Apparently, well, it'd be a breach of international law to recognise the Palestinian state, and quite apart from the fact that it won't actually help achieve anything other than the cheering of Hamas and the horror of the hostages who were just been released, and those who are still behind bars in cages in tunnels held by Hamas. I want to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number.
the Pacific tectonic plate, which is a huge, dense piece of rock, which is being forced underneath the continental plate, the Asian continental plate, at 3 inches a year. Now, that might not sound very much, but with the mass that's being pushed there and the build-up of tension means that in this region, this part of the Pacific Rim of Fire where this happens, you get build-up of incredible tensions and you get a sudden release.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me. Look, I've been yapping on, and we haven't even got to the latest immigration figures. We haven't even got to the latest protests at asylum hotels, or indeed the chaos after planes were grounded across Britain. I'm feeling a little bit worse for it today on the basis of waking up at 4 a.m. After my daughter got home because of having flown in from a month's travelling after again a long. Well, I got in at 4 a.m. After a very long journey because of the air traffic control, because nothing works in our country anymore, Philip.
Yeah, but air traffic controllers saying it was only an outage for 20 minutes. Well, no, it's not. It's the consequences of it.
The thousands of passengers.
And they're saying that the consequences are going on today.
And loads of flights are cancelled. Yeah, exactly. They were saying on the plane, look, at least we've got a plane. We've got a plane. We're only a few hours late. We've got a plane.
Don't let go of it.
But again, because it's air traffic control, not the airlines, you can't claim compensation for a long delay. Which is outrageous.
That's ridiculous.
So the air traffic people should have to pay for it. Again, if you're not going to invest in stuff. Anyway, we will come back to that but in a moment. Let's take a quick call. Herbie is on the line in Harrow on the Palestinian state and a breach of international law, according to many peers in the House of Lords. What do you want to say, Herbie?
Well, I think that Sir Keir Starmer has completely lost his way. He hasn't got a clue. I mean, say Canada has now announced the same thing, and Trump's going to retaliate. Is he going to retaliate onto us or what? Unfortunately, the world is completely gone balmy at the moment. We're not happy living together. We can't work together. We can't seem to come together. It seems to be so much tension, and Sir Keir Starmer isn't making it any easier. There's conflict after conflict after conflict around the world, and now we've even got a bigger one.
Do you know what? Actually, we've got fewer wars around the world. Historically, I mean, that's the incredible thing. I mean, I'm worried about what conflicts. I'm worried about Gaza and Israel. I'm worried about Ukraine and what might happen in Taiwan. But chiefly, I think our Prime Minister should spend more of his time worrying about what's happening back at home.
Oh, don't be silly, don't you, Julie? He called an emergency meeting on Monday. Didn't need to talk about it, not talk about the crisis we got in this country, but to talk about something else that really doesn't affect us. We see what we see, unfortunately. It's the conflict that we really shouldn't be getting involved with. But yet he can't put this country to right, but he can put the rest of the world right. I've got a solution to him. I think there's a meeting that we need to call him and Lammy and the rest of the cabinet, but it's in Mars, but don't send it's one-way ticket.
I love it, Herbie. Thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate that. We're going to take another quick break, and I do want to hear from you about top lawyers warning Keir Starmer that recognising a Palestinian state does risk breaking international law. And of course, former British Israeli hostage like Emily Damari condemning the Prime Minister for what he's done. But is it all right because, the Canadians have done it too? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:33 is the time. Short, sharp break, but let's get to my next guest, Mike Neville. He's a former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector and is joining us to talk about where we are with those convictions yesterday, the Manchester airport attack. Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, good morning, Julia.
I have to say, I mean, I've been following the trial. Again, we can't talk about the trials and give opinion on trials whether they're ongoing, and we have to wait until once someone is charged. We have to wait for a verdict. We've got though only a partial verdict in this case. We've got a conviction of one of the brothers for the attacks on two WPCs. One had her nose broken, but also on another man in a Starbucks in the airport. But we're awaiting whether we're going to get a retrial for both brothers about alleged assaults on the male police officer, who's of course featured very highly in a lot of the videos that we've seen on this. So it does limit what we can say, but in terms of what we can say without being in contempt of any future court proceedings, what did you make of that verdict yesterday?
Well, I was quite amazed, Julia, that it took a jury 10 hours after viewing that footage to make any sort of decision. I mean, the way that the female officer was taken out and the bloodied nose, it just made obvious sense. And the fact that the jury had heard that a man had been assaulted beforehand and the officers were in full uniform, this idea that they were somehow shocked who it was or they didn't know what was going to go on.
All of those two women were women.
Yeah, two female officers. I just think it's outrageous. And I think part of it could have been influenced, of course, by senior politicians like Yvette Cooper, who intervened before they knew the full facts, saying, and I suppose the Liberal left, they come from a point of view where if you show the initial footage that immediately somebody from an ethnic minority must be a victim and the police must be the villains. And that was a real issue. And we heard about Keir Starmer saying about influencing trials with Axel Rudiker-Barner. Well, best he has a word with his Home Secretary, who is supposed to support the police.
Well, again, at the time, I think everyone thought that when we saw that first clip of the police officer kicking and stamping on the head of one of the brothers. There are no charges pending on that, so we can talk about that. I think people thought the charges, if there were going to be any, would be brought against the police officer. There were protests outside a police station. There were big fears of unrest. We had the local MP Paul Wall for Rochdale, newly elected, sitting with the family, saying they were deeply traumatised by what had happened, calling for calm. We had the lawyer who then later left the case, saying that these poor brothers had been this terrible victim of this awful crime. There were lots and lots of talk on social media. This is clearly a, white police officer, Muslim, brown-skinned man, must be racist, must be Islamophobic. And then, of course, we had the leaking of the full video and saw the full context. And now we've had the trial. I followed it very closely. We weren't allowed to talk about it on air. And I read the judge's summing up as well. The brothers, I'm going to talk about one, but one brother, the brother who's been convicted of these three assaults and faces a likely retrial on another assault, basically claiming sort of this man of good character, and that he'd been provoked into this assault of this man in Starbucks, and the claim there was abuse and shouting. None of the staff who worked there heard that, but they did see the punch and they did see the headbutt. It defies belief to me that someone who's got an unblemished career, unblemished criminal record, never, absolutely lived whiter than white, perfect life, knows how to throw a punch repeatedly like that, has that reaction when police officers stop him, and knows how to headbutt someone.
And it's quite, what it strikes me as incredible, Julie, is that they come from Pakistan. Now, some of the viewers and listeners may remember a show called Karachi Cops.
Can I say though, I thought they were British born.
The British, I'm saying they were flying in from Pakistan, weren't they? Flew in from Pakistan. Their mother was from Pakistan.
I think the brothers were there at the airport to meet the mother who'd flown in, which was...
So the family got some Pakistani origins. You watch a show called Karachi Cops from the 90s, and you see what the Pakistani police do to a suspect who has assaulted police officer. So they come from that background. But also what the public may be shocked to hear is that two of those officers, the male officer, P.C. Marsden, and the other female officer, P.C. Cook, is that they are still possibly facing gross misconduct hearings, and they may well be sacked. I just think it's incredible. In any other airport, what gets me as well, this is an airport situation. Yeah. This is where there's heightened security, people are armed. They're lucky they did. Any other airport around the world, if that had been America, they would have been shot.
Absolutely. And it's a point Philip Ingram made too, that it's important to remember they were armed officers. And again, the surprise of this man, Mohammed Fahir Ahmad, that the police turned up, minutes after you've just headbutted and punched a man in front of witnesses in an airport. You don't think there's CCTV and police officers around. It's quite bizarre, isn't it? But this is the thing. The video that we first saw prompted outrage. Of the police officer stamping on the head and kicking the man lying prone on the ground. We didn't know the context. Now, only seeing that bit of video, I was saying to Philip Ingram, I called police officer friends of mine. I spoke to many people who we often have on the show, police officers, to ask, look, what's your perspective on this? You've got experience, and they all, to a man and a woman, said that was unacceptable. Whatever the context, it went too far. The kick or the stamp was whichever the second one was went too far. Once you saw the full video, do you think it was justified, given that there are no police actions, just as an independent Office of Police Conduct investigation? Do you think he went too far?
I do, personally, yes. I don't think kicking somebody in the head, you can kill them. I understand why he used his feet, because he had his hands on his weapon, and he could have kicked him in the body. Kicking somebody in the head. If I was a senior detective investigating that, I think the problem is you're handing victim cards to that person, from them becoming the
in the heat of the moment.
Heat of the moment, and we've all been. I've been there with a red mist. If you're involved in violence like that, where people suddenly attack you, two of the colleagues have been taken out, and you're suddenly on your own. The red mist descends, and you're sort of fighting for your life. So it is very hard to criticise when that has happened. You can't. It was wrong, in my view. It was wrong, and some people have tried to justify it to me, and I don't agree with that.
So you, as a police officer, who've been in that similar sort of situation, you still think that he went too far? But I mean, I think a lot of us feel like, well, given what we've seen from the full video, you could say, well, what you did was wrong, but slap on the hand, carry on your way. I'd still rather have that police officer on the streets protecting us. Thank you very much.
I mean, you've got to take into context, like Stephen Watson, the Chief Constable of Manchester, has been highly supportive of his officers. And he says that 44 of his officers are assaulted every week. That's the reality of being a police officer, being in the emergency services. You're turning up to places to help people, and then suddenly you're brutally attacked. So, and sometimes police officers get it wrong. Police officers are human. You're standing there with two colleagues, two female colleagues.
I think also I think very critically, two female colleagues. I think that would have had that. I think for a right-thinking man, that would have an extra impact.
I agree, absolutely agree. Sometimes the police officers get it wrong. However, when we look at this, it is 99 times against one wrong thing. The viciousness of the attacks against those police officers. This man deserves to go to jail for several years, and let's see the sentence, because again, all right-minded people were thinking, what did Lucy Connolly get and what will he get? And this will sum up two-tier Britain.
Well, this is the thing, okay, because she's been sent away. We understand she's going to be out within a matter of weeks, but I think we knew some months ago she would be likely to be out in August because, the length of sentence you serve after a 31-month sentence. It looks likely, if we're looking at, the three different charges being brought against Mohammed Fahir Ahmad, for which he's been found guilty, that he will face concurrent sentences. I've never understood that, by the way. I think they should just run consecutively after each other, each one individually. We've had that with the grooming gangs as well. Like, it's all right. You just get 14 years for raping a girl, 1,000 times, and three different girls. But I just don't understand why we do that. They don't do it in America. But they're like, this guy Ahmad is likely to get max of 5 years, and he won't serve 5 years behind bars. Punching two female police officers in the face, punching a complete, stranger in Starbucks in the face and headbutting him, and he'll only probably realistically serve best part of, if we're lucky, 2 years behind bars. I'm sorry, that doesn't fly for me. That's not acceptable.
No, well, I think the public will feel the same, and they're often duped into the sentences. Well, as a young PC, I remember I found a man on the street. I searched a man on the street, and he got 9 years for rape and 2 for burglary. Now that 9 plus 2 to me equaled 11.
Yeah.
But then, of course, the 2 years was concurrent, and you get half off. So. Yeah. 9 plus 2 equals 4.5. That's the corruption of the criminal justice system. It isn't fair. It tells a lie to the public.
Yep.
And we need violent men being put in prison.
Absolutely. Mike Neville, really appreciate you joining us, former Metropolitan Police DCI. Thank you for that. Philip Ingram, just want to come back in on that?
Yeah, I agree completely. Prison should be for people that are a threat to society.
Tweets. Someone could write a nasty tweet.
Well, yeah.
Could offend someone.
Yeah.
Have I broken you?
You have.
You sounded like you deflated then.
I'm completely deflated, because why put someone in prison for a tweet? You punish them in some other way that will cause them to think about what they do again. But prison should be there for people that you have to physically remove from society.
And I genuinely think that if you only serve realistically 2 years behind bars for punching 3 people viciously, unprovoked in the face,
it's just wrong.
There's something is horribly wrong. Genuinely, if I ever stood for election, if I am ever mad enough to do this, it would have to be my genuinely, OK, stop the boats and all that, deportations, bye, you're written off. Right, we're just going to take you to a rock in the middle of the ocean, fend for yourselves, I don't care. But it would also be, I would build so many more prisons. I would literally just build so many prisons, and I would be putting people away for the full length of their sentence. Every single day of that sentence. Oh, but they wouldn't get good behaviour. Yeah, tell you what though, any bad behaviour, you could serve more time. It's really, really simple. It's just really simple.
But if you took all the people out of prison who are not a threat to society, who've done something wrong and need to be punished, but they're not a threat to society, you wouldn't have to build new prisons. There'd be plenty of places.
No, I still think we need more prisons and more people behind bars, but there we are. Let's start naming names. 10:40, come the revolution. 10:45 is the time. Actually, we're going to talk about airports not in chaos with people assaulting people. We're going to be talking about the airports in chaos because of something going wrong with a technical error at air traffic control. But who's to blame, and should heads roll? And this is why I got woken up at 4 o'clock this morning, because my daughter's flight was delayed by this. So we're going to talk to Lisa Minnow, the travel editor at The Sun, about it, and whether or not you're entitled to any compensation. This is Talk. His backbenchers basically are demanding recognition of Palestine. His front bench team are not able to deliver that. They get a lot of earache and ear bashing from their backbenchers. He's done this just to tick the box of saying to his political party and to his cabinet and to his deputy prime minister that are all campaigning overtly against Keir Starmer. He's basically had to sort of appease them, and he hasn't done it once. He's done it before on many other issues. That guy's not a leader. He's literally just following what his party wants.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:48 is the time. Let's talk about travel chaos. Is it on the roads? Is it on the trains? Is it on the planes? Well, it's usually all three, isn't it? But this time it is the planes, and passengers still suffering after an outage, some sort of technical error that we saw with air traffic control in the UK that affected many thousands of passengers, including my own daughter on her way back from her travels. So thank you very much for that 4 a.m. wake-up call. Let's talk to Lisa Minnow. She's travel editor at The Sun. Good morning to you, Lisa. Good morning. Can you hear us? Are you on mute? Hello, Lisa.
I can hear you.
We can hear you now.
I'm on mute. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry. Can I just clarify? You look like you're somewhere rather nice. Where are you?
I'm on Porquerolles. I think you know it well.
Oh, she's in the south of France. Oh, God, how jealous are we all right now? It looks very nice down there. She's got the sunglasses on. Are you actually on a boat right now?
I am on a boat. I'm apologising for the fact I am on a boat. Sorry.
I love that she's bobbing around. This is actually cruel, OK? We're seeing here, I've got rain coming down outside this window. We've got people with travel chaos, people not able to go on their holes, people long delayed. And there you are sitting on a boat in the south of France. And then we've just lost the signal. What? Lisa, you'll be the death of me. Look, let's talk about this then, and hopefully we can get her back on the line. But hundreds of thousands of passengers across the UK still suffering travel chaos after. I mean, it's amazing how many people can be affected by this after the air traffic control failure, grounded planes. This was at the start of the school summer holidays. So they say it was a radar failure at the air traffic control provider NATS, and London airspace was closed for more than an hour after a radar failure that lasted 20 minutes. But, London airspace being closed for an hour involves hundreds and hundreds of planes. I think we've got Lisa back on her boat. Lisa, talk us through what we think we know of what this technical error was and why it had such big repercussions.
Well, this was just a 20-minute outage of the radar system at Swanwick. So that's the National Air Traffic Control Centre at Swanwick. And just 20 minutes of a software glitch has meant that 155 flights were cancelled yesterday. And we're still seeing those issues today, with flights being delayed and cancelled into today. Airlines are absolutely furious. They are so fed up with the NAT system. We've had Michael O'Leary calling for Martin Roll's resignation. And we've also had Heidi Alexander today on the phone with NATS, trying to work out exactly what went wrong and how we can stop it happening again.
Well, indeed, Ryanair boss Michael O'Leary was saying he wants the boss of air traffic control basically to go, because he says that we've had problems like this before and they haven't basically come up with a contingency plan for what to do when it happens again. And we've had problems at different airports before. And at the end of the day, it's the airports that have to. So the airport can have a problem, or is air traffic control in France is nearly usually the problem for delays for us. But it's they were out on strike every other day. But the airlines are the ones who kind of have to pick up the bill and end up dealing with it, and they get the bad reputation from people saying, oh, well, I was flying Ryanair, I was flying BA, and my flight was delayed, and they associate it with the airline, and the airline doesn't have to give them compensation because it's not their fault, but people have to give them vouchers. Sometimes they might need a hotel if their flight is cancelled and they're overseas, and they end up having to deal with all of the fallout, and then there's no repercussions for the people who had the failure.
Exactly that. And it is the airlines that are actually funding the National Air Traffic Control Service. So you can understand their frustration when they're the ones, it's costing them millions of pounds. So the last big outage we had was in August of 2023. That was over the bank holiday weekend. And over 700,000 people were impacted by that one. And there's huge frustration from the airlines because it does cost them millions on their bottom line. And they want to see that these systems are much more foolproofed, that they're not going to have these kind of outages again, because just 20 minutes still saw 155 flights cancelled yesterday.
And it wasn't just
tens of thousands.
And it wasn't just cancellations. It was so many flights were delayed for hours and hours after that. So my daughter had and a friend had a late night flight on the way back from 4 weeks of travel, and they ended up, having to get a train, at Gatwick, at 2 in the morning, and they got home at 4 in the morning. Young teenage girls travelling in the middle of the night because of this of these problems. But they're not entitled to a single penny of compensation, not a single penny. If it was the airline having a technical fault, they'd be entitled to a couple £100.
That's exactly right, and that's why the airlines are so frustrated, because they're the ones, as you say, getting the bad reputation. They're the ones that the passengers quite rightly would take it out on them. But obviously, with the number of flights that are flying at the moment, so at one point last night, BA normally would have had 45 flights a minute taking off and landing, and they were reduced to 32 flights. And that's a huge amount of difference in terms of planes sitting there on runways. We had reports yesterday of people sitting on runways for up to 6 hours waiting for...
And again, we know, and a lot of us have had that post-lockdown where you go, we've got all the planes going on time, lovely jubbly. You get in, the plane doors are closed, and then they say, really sorry, we're going to have a 3-hour sit on the, on the tarmac. And then, you'd be, there's no plane I get on, whether it's just going to be an hour's journey or anything, that I don't take full snacks for 6 hours just in case, because the chances that it's happened to me too many times. But you feel for the people who are, who've got young children, babies, trying to deal with all of that. And the staff could be as wonderful to say, but it's a pain. But the thing is, for a lot of people, I'm very lucky. I get to do a lot of travel, okay? You're looking at short haul. If someone's, long haul travel, or someone's, they're going away for a weekend, for a family event, a wedding, say, people travelling on, they've taken time off work, they're freelance, they're self-employed, they don't get paid when they're away, but their holiday flight has been cancelled, they can't get away. There's a massive impact. People save up all year to go on their summer holiday in July, and this has a massive impact on people's lives.
Yeah, and we've already seen it. It's really the IT systems that seem to be the issue every time. Just a couple of days ago, we had the e-gates that went down at both Heathrow and Gatwick airports. So, we're seeing it time and time again, that it's the resilience of these IT systems that needs to be looked at, because they are so vulnerable to problems. And that's where, at a time like this, when you've got so many people travelling, it can lead to real issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, what we need is basically sort of, upgrade everything in terms of our infrastructure in all areas of travel, trains, planes and automobiles. But we've got an announcement, we understand. Heathrow, they're poised to announce their third runway plans, and the Prime Minister is going to unveil more plans for airport expansion. I mean, that's something to be welcomed, but no doubt will cause chaos for years on end.
That's right, yes. So Heathrow have come up with their plans. They're being put forward to the government now for the third runway. This could almost double the size of the number of passengers that would be able to take off and land at Heathrow. We're talking about 2 new terminals, the creation of another terminal where Terminal 2 and 3 used to be. So there's lots going on, and it is a positive step, but we need to make sure that the government is giving everything it can to making sure that these don't get caught up, like so many times in the past, in years and years of committees and various different processes. It needs to start, and the idea is that Heathrow are saying we're ready to start, and that we will be ready for 2030.
Yeah, good luck with that. We'll see. I mean, I think it's... I think that my entire life there has been conversations about that third runway at Heathrow, and I'm 57 years old. It's a long time. Lisa, we're going to leave you. I know you're gutted about that as you sit on your boat in the lovely Mediterranean, the south of France. I just looked up. I know where you are. It's 27 degrees there, everybody. So we're all going to have pity on Lisa and her terrible, terrible life. Thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful. Every summer she can go around the whole world. She can go. Lisa Miller, travel editor for an international newspaper, and they have family camping holidays in the south of France. They go to a campsite. Oh. Yeah, absolutely. She loves it. Absolutely loves it. Yeah. But I know exactly where she is right now. I'm just like, very jealous. But it is. I mean, it is just chaos, isn't it, Philip? And we just get used to the idea. Oh yeah, we're just going to have chaos. I mean, and the fact that we're reliant on the French air traffic controllers not being on strike which is, I mean, roughly 3 days a year when they're not on strike, for all of our routes out of our country to anywhere going vaguely south or east is a big enough problem. But we need to have tech that works. We're supposed to be a first world country.
Well, exactly. And you're given our congested airspace and how busy Heathrow is the busiest airfield in the world.
It's not just Heathrow, it was all the airports.
Well, exactly. But given your Heathrow's unique position as being the busiest airport in the world, you'd hope that NATS would have a backup radar system that if one goes down, another one flips in and you don't notice it. And I don't understand how something's gone down for 20 minutes, yet you get flights stuck on the ground for 6 hours. Yeah, this is crazy. And on the Heathrow third runway bit, in 2018, no idea flip-flop care voted against it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But again, you're in that ridiculous situation, again, without having the extra leeway. So our runways of our major airports, they are operating at full capacity all the time. Yeah. There is no leeway. So if there is a problem like an outage like that, and again, we had that ridiculous chaos, there isn't any spare space. We just don't have it. It's like our hospitals. If you run at sort of 98% capacity all the time, if you do have a major bout of flu doing the rounds, you don't have any bed spare, whereas, for instance, most other European countries run at about sort of 80, 85 max capacity, so that there is always that leeway. We have no leeway in anything, whether it's the trains, whether it's on the roads, whether it's in the planes, every NHS. Our schools are operating at full capacity. There's no space. Those kids from private schools. We're just we're on the edge. We're just constantly waiting for the next disaster.
Yeah, can we get our politicians to start working to that level as well? They seem to focus on things that are irrelevant to this country. Yeah,
well, indeed. Very, very good point. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. If you were afflicted, if you also had a 4 a.m. wake up because of those traffic delays, I'd love to hear from you as well. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000, in particular about Britain's top lawyers, many in the House of Lords, are warning Keir Starmer that recognising a Palestinian state risks breaking international law. We thought he cared about international law. He doesn't care about our borders or anything like that, but he does care about that, doesn't he? Love to hear your thoughts. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 11. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense and the home of travel editors sitting on boats in the sunshine. I'm really, really jealous of that.
Yes.
with our sunglasses on. Philip Ingram's also here, former senior military intelligence officer. And we're looking out the window here. We kind of alter. I think we're going back into some summer again soon, aren't we?
Possibly,
just,
yeah.
I don't know if it's nice where you are.
I'm just drooling over boats. I'd love to have a boat and be sitting on it somewhere. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it'd be lovely.
I don't mind the bad weather on a boat.
Really?
Yeah, no, I've done lots of it.
Oh yeah, well that's because you're military, because you're hard. It's because you're hard. There we are. Anyway, as I say, with the home of common sense, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or you connected to us, it is lovely to have your company. Don't forget, if you miss anything of the show, you can go to my YouTube page. We've called it the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show to make it easy to find. It's on YouTube. Just put that in, hit subscribe, and you never will need to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about Keir Starmer and his recognition of a Palestinian state. It's been followed suit by, well, he followed Emmanuel Macron of France and now Mark Carney of Canada. I mean, these are not two people you necessarily want to be on the same side on in recognising the Palestinian state. At least Mark Carney put some conditions on Hamas, which the Prime Minister here totally failed to do in return for that recognition. You know, I don't know, things like democratic reform and releasing the hostages, not even mentioned by Keir Starmer. But he's facing questions today, not just from former hostages, including Emily Damari, a British-Israeli hostage, who said that this decision is a immoral and shameful decision by the Prime Minister, but also some of Britain's top lawyers, some Supreme Court judges as well, who are now in the House of Lords. They've warned Keir Starmer that his pledge to recognise the state risks breaking international law because they say that a Palestinian state wouldn't meet the basic criteria for recognition as set out under an international treaty dating back to 1933. Plus, we're going to be talking about trans children, because there are no trans children, but for a long time thousands of children were referred to NHS gender clinics, but without any follow-up at all about, well, how well they had dealt with their treatment, their drug treatment, or whether or not they had decided not to transition, or how they'd coped with having their bodies mutilated by people claiming to be well-meaning. Well, now thousands of those children will have their long-term health and happiness monitored. It's the world's largest study of its kind, and it's going to investigate all key aspects of their health, their well-being, mental health, school performance, relationships, and underlying conditions such as ADHD and autism, which actually are very, very prevalent in those who claim they believe they are transgender. And we're going to be talking about all of that coming up. Philip Ingram, once again, welcome to you. Let's return to the Palestinian recognition, because these top lawyers, and they really are, I mean, we're talking about former Supreme Court judges, lots of the 40 members of the House of Lords, but they do include 7 KCs. Lord Pannick, he very senior, he's represented the government many times, and many other senior figures. And they've written to the Prime Minister saying, they've written to Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, and he's the government's top legal advisor, the Prime Minister's top legal advisor, saying a Palestinian state wouldn't meet the criteria for recognition set out in the Montevideo Convention in a treaty signed in 1933. Now, this lays out 4 basic criteria for statehood. And they're kind of statements of the bleeding obvious, really. And the treaty says a state must possess a permanent population, which Palestine, as people think it exists, doesn't.
They're
refugees. They're refugees. So, you know,
is there because they're all refugees.
A defined territory. Well, that's not agreed. You've got the West Bank, you've got Gaza. They are claiming, both Hamas and the Fatah-run Palestinian Authority.
You define that in the same way that you define women.
Well, exactly. Well, they want Israel. They think that's their defined territory. Well, that's not going to happen. A government, again, you've got, and a government, by the way, with the capacity to enter into relations with other states. Well, we've got Palestinian Authority, elected 20 years ago, not a democratically elected government. You've got who, by the way, still happily rewards people for killing Jewish people. I mean, let's be honest. We've got Hamas, which is a prescribed terrorist organisation. This isn't a state. These aren't this isn't a state. There's nothing to recognise. You may as well recognise Narnia. realistically, you know, okay, well, Aslan's the government. We'll recognise Narnia. I mean, or, you know, the Ice Queen or whatever she was. This is a load of nonsense. This is, as everyone's been pointing out, political posturing and gesture politics.
It is, and the sad thing about it is it's giving into the disinformation that's coming out that is totally focused from an anti-Israeli perspective. It's giving into the disinformation that his backbenchers have believed, and now he's reinforcing that.
When you say disinformation, do you mean a lot of the claims that are put out as fact by the BBC and others?
And by others, yeah.
I mean, it is propaganda. And again, yet again, more claims, and again, written up as fact by news organisations today about a huge number of people shot dead or shot and seriously injured by the IDF when they were going to get food. Again, not a single bit of footage. And they'll say the health ministry and the hospitals have claimed, but they are all run by Hamas, a terrorist organisation.
And I've just on social media, put that point to someone who said, "Give me any proof you've got," and they come back and said, "United Nations Human Rights Organisation." No, United Nations organisations in Gaza get their information from Hamas. And therefore, that is why we're getting so much disinformation that's put out. And Hamas know that they're winning in the information war.
But we've got all of this footage of, I mean, it's horrible footage of people, you know, walking and to go and get food, of children sort of clamouring for food. And we have the pictures of the emaciated children. I'm sure there will be some. We know there is some hunger. Andrew Fox was, you know well, was on the show earlier this week, and he's been out there in Gaza, and he says, yeah, definitely there has been hunger. We know, you know, we're not denying that. Clearly, people are living in you're out of your home. Your home's been bombed. You're having to move from different parts of the country. You know, you're under the rule of Hamas and IDF. It's horrific. I've got every sympathy, particularly for the children. But when we've got claims of genocide, we've got claims of mass starvation, and we had claims of famine was imminent as early as January 2024, and we've got a population that's grown by 2% in that time. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not entirely sure that those people who've been crying wolf haven't helped the Palestinian people there. But everyone man and his dog in Palestine has got a mobile phone. They've got a smartphone. We know that. We watch that. We can see them at any ceremony, any event. They're holding their films. They are filming constantly at every single event. And yet, we very rarely ever see Hamas soldiers with weapons, or wonder why not. And we have not seen, genuinely, not a single instance. We have not got a single bit of footage of IDF soldiers shooting people at one of these food distribution areas. Not a single bit of footage. And I have scoured the internet. I've asked an awful lot of people, where is the evidence? And yet we had actually Cabinet Minister on air yesterday on various media saying she had seen, you know, we've seen the footage of the IDF, of the Israeli soldiers shooting people going, we've seen. Well, you haven't, because it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
And if it did exist, do you not think it would be leading the BBC News at 6 o'clock every night?
In the same way that none of the casualties that are going into the hospitals, there are no hospitals that exist until they want to show pictures of women and children.
The IDF has destroyed all the hospitals, and yet they all still exist.
Exactly. You never see pictures of Hamas fighters going in. And as you say, you don't see pictures of Hamas fighters anywhere. The other thing we don't hear about are the Israeli casualties that Hamas are still continuing to have on a daily basis. Part of the problem here is Benjamin Netanyahu, and the way he is running things from an Israeli perspective, is doing it from a self-protection perspective, and is leaving himself wide open to all of these accusations, just reinforcing the weak position that he's in the Israeli government. And the Israelis have lost the information domain. Hamas have seen how they can win the overall conflict by getting them recognised.
And they have won.
And they have
won in that sense. They really have. The Palestinian people haven't, because Hamas don't represent the Palestinian people.
They don't.
We don't know, though, how many people in Gaza would actually still, if given an election, would vote for Hamas, because there were put it this way, there were an awful lot of civilians who, apparently innocent civilians, who were happily spitting on and cheering when the bloodied bodies of women who'd been raped and killed and then taken their bodies taken into Gaza by Hamas on October the 7th. They didn't look horrified then, or was that just the people they happened to drive by?
Everyone seemed to be cheering at what was going on and seemed to be celebrating it. And the other thing that isn't hitting the mainstream press is the footage that's coming out of where Hamas capture individuals, local individuals, who have got aid and got food, not from the Hamas distribution centres, but have got it from elsewhere. And I've seen horrific videos of what happens to them. It's more than just shooting them in the knee. It is absolutely horrific what happens to these individuals, and they're tortured and then killed.
Yeah, and we've had enough evidence of that we know that is happening. Yeah. And the families have spoken out as well. Yes. Those people protesting Hamas are very, very, very brave souls. They really, really are. But are they the minority? Are they the majority? Well, we don't know. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Does it matter if some of Britain's top lawyers have warned Starmer that recognising a Palestinian state could break international law? Because he and Lord Hermer, as Attorney General, they've always gone about international law. We had to give away the Chagos because of international law. We can't, we can't deport any immigrants who've come here illegally on boats because of international law. They care about international law all the time. Apparently, not in this case.
Yeah, well, it's only whenever they want to interpret it the way they want to. So, and this is the other thing about...
They're despicable. They really are despicable.
They are, and this is the other thing about international law. And when people bring in genocide accusations and all the rest of it, international law isn't, if that, then you've broken the law.
Yeah,
it's open to interpretation.
Yeah, that's why lawyers are so rich.
There are so many grey areas in it, and therefore amateurs interpreting it get it wrong.
Yeah. Okay, we are talking about some of the top legal minds in the country. Yeah. Let's talk about just ridiculous situation we're in regarding the Manchester airport attack. And we have now got a conviction three convictions for one of the two brothers who were charged in relation to those assaults on one male and two female police officers and a member of the public at a Starbucks at Manchester Airport. Mohammed Fahir Amaz, he's the 20-year-old of the two brothers, has been found guilty of assaulting two female police officers, punching PC Lydia Ward in the face, breaking her nose, and also punching PC Ellie Cook. Also, the earlier assault of a member of the public at Starbucks, where he punched and then headbutted him. The way normal people do. Now, the jury was unable to reach a verdict on whether Amaz and his brother Mohammed Ahmad, who's 26-year-old, had also assaulted a male officer. This, of course, is PC Zachary Marsden, who has been very much the focus of this. Because the first footage we knew, or first evidence we knew anything about this case, was footage that was released, which was a tiny excerpt of the full video, which was of PC Marsden kicking and stamping on the head of Mohammed Fahir Amaz. Now, that case is going very likely to another trial. They're going to have a retrial. That means we would be in contempt of court if we had phone calls on it, if we discussed that aspect of the case. We're not allowed to. We can discuss where the verdict has been given, and we can discuss the fact that the PC Marsden he did face, the CPS looked into whether or not he would face charges for possible assault on Amaz. They did not bring charges, and there would have been a public outcry if they had. They still face an investigation by the IOPC, investigate police conduct. Could possibly lose his job. I mean, who knows? He has been backed by the chief of Greater Manchester Police. But the thing about this case, it almost wasn't brought. This case emerged in late July. We had a video of the brothers with their lawyer and talking about how they were victims, and there were protests outside police stations. It was this could be we were basically talking about a George Floyd situation at one point, were we not? I mean, that's why he was being compared, George Floyd, in terms of he's an innocent victim, this man lying prone on the ground. When we saw the fuller video, an awful lot of people who'd defended these two men, or particularly the one man who's now being found guilty, they kind of look like chumps. And I include Yvette Coopers and the local MP Paul War, who was talking about this family are traumatised. They're traumatised. They're appealing for calm and all of that. But we had a police officer, Mike Neville, on a bit earlier, and I had a lot of police officers on the day that emerged, and I spoke to people on and off air about this. A lot of people do still think, a lot of people, professionals, who know what it's like to be in that scenario where you've been in that the red mist of being under attack and fearing for your life, fearing for your female colleagues, that PC Marsden did go too far.
Well, this is where if you do go too far, you lose the moral high ground. As soon as you've lost the moral high ground, it undermines so many other aspects of what it is.
Do you understand why he did that?
I understand completely why he did.
I'm not bothered that he did. Now I know the full story.
No,
put it that way.
and he had his hand on his gun. He was unsure as to what exactly the extent of injuries were.
He's seen two female officers punched to the ground.
And the other officers that were supporting him. So he wasn't sure how much support he would have left, and he had a violent offender on the ground that was still resisting arrest. He had to do something, and his choice was, to hit him hard to stop him from being a threat, or the only other way to stop someone from being a threat is you shoot them.
And he did have a weapon.
And you don't shoot to wound, you shoot to kill.
You pointed out earlier that actually in any other airport, in any other country,
he'd have been shot dead.
He would have been shot dead.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
It really is crazy, and therefore the way government ministers and the Home Secretary in particular came out to criticise the police immediately
without knowing the full story.
Without knowing the full story, and came out quickly to do that. And now we've got a conviction. She hasn't come out to apologise and say, "I got it wrong."
Yeah, that is the key thing. Again, I mean, I was very much guided by the police officers I spoke to on and off air, because I've not been in that scenario. And I certainly think a member of the public, absolutely no issue. But we know that police officers, and you're a military man yourself, you are trained to not have the red mist going down, to stay in control. It did look like he was out of control. But I have to say, and a lot of that was brought up in the case in relation to his actions. I have to say, I'm more and more coming around to the view that that his actions were more justified than I had originally thought.
Oh, I
know how our audience feels about that. It's totally justified.
I felt that red mist in a riot situation where I was hit in the face. Luckily, I had a visor on.
You have a human reaction
with a brick, and then someone jumped through the window with a weapon in their hand. And that red mist, that individual was very lucky not to be shot dead.
I'm loving your face right now. I'm quite scared now, I've got to be honest. I mean, it's an extraordinary situation, isn't it? We were talking a little bit earlier about all these planes being grounded and cancelled and delayed. And I said my own family member was affected by that. Those are people travelling in and out of the country legally. We have a lot of people arriving illegally. We get more people came illegally on dinghies. The Border Force had to bring more Channel migrants to shore yesterday. We've got thousands and thousands of locals packing streets of Waterlooville. It's near Portsmouth, and they've been protesting after the Home Office secretly plotted, they say, to move asylum seekers into flats worth 250 grand. I've discovered this week that a local hotel in my area has been turned into an asylum hotel, and it's really interesting because I was talking with a neighbour about the increased crime, like attempted burglaries, phone thefts, bag thefts. I had my bags thrown last year, and the noticeable jump in crime has happened. I know this is a complete shock to everybody, since we had an asylum hotel very, very nearby, and I don't know if those two things are linked, but question marks about that. Meanwhile, legal immigration, the ones that the government has absolutely control over. Now, this largely happening under the Tory watch. People approve visas under the Tories, the Boris bounce on this. We've seen record population growth for the second year running. This time, more than 700,000 more people came into this country than left. Wow. And it's almost entirely the increase. It's not people aren't having babies. More is people coming to live in this country. This is unsustainable madness.
It's completely unsustainable madness.
All of it. All of it.
Looking at the illegal migration that's coming in, I do not understand why, when people come in, they have to be put up in a hotel, and they have to be moved into.
Well, okay, what do you do with them?
You build camps.
I mean, I'm with you on that.
You put camps of porta cabins up. You look at the Bibi Stockholm that caused so much controversy. That ship that was put in the port. An exact same ship has been put into Glasgow port so that the crew from HMS Queen Elizabeth can live on it, while HMS Queen Elizabeth gets refund. It's good enough for our service personnel who put their lives on the line to protect this country, but it's not good enough for asylum seekers who have been living rough in France for a couple of years waiting to get across the Channel, and therefore we put them into somewhere that's comfortable, that's safe.
And we saw that extraordinary footage that Isabel Oakes shot, our international editor, got an amazing exclusive of just, I mean, outrageous conditions. 4 poster beds in a 4-star hotel, meals on demand, cleaners, the works.
I'm sorry, it's obscene. And if the individuals think that their human rights are being affected by being put into safe accommodation where they're fed and are kept away from the centres of population elsewhere until their asylum applications are processed. If they're processed and they get through, then they can go out into the system. Until then, we hold them somewhere in a secure facility.
That's going to have to be the only answer, because they think that the solution is getting them out of hotels and putting them in local residence. And as we've seen what's happened in Waterlooville, no, we don't want them anywhere near us and our families. It's that simple. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Do give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. I'd love to hear your thoughts also on the recognition of Palestine. Or what if it is actually in breach of international law? Does that matter? I mean, it's also just in breach of sanity and morality. I think it's rather more important than international law. Call me old-fashioned. Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1, standard network rate message. Sadly, I cannot take calls on the Manchester airport attack, because there is likely to be a retrial involving charges involving the 2 brothers and the alleged assault on the male police officer, P.C. Marsden. So we're not able to discuss that. We'll be in contempt of court. I can assure you, as and when we know if there's no retrial, or as and when we know what the result of that verdict is, if there is a retrial, then we will discuss it in full. And I promise I will take every single one of your calls. This is Talk. His backbenchers basically are demanding recognition of Palestine. His front bench team are not able to deliver that. They get a lot of earache and ear bashing from their backbenchers. He's done this just to tick the box of saying to his political party and to his cabinet and to his deputy prime minister, that are all campaigning overtly against Keir Starmer, he's basically had to sort of appease them. And he hasn't done it once. He's done it before on many other issues. That guy's not a leader. He's literally just following what his party wants.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk at the Home of Common Sense. 11:26 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and you are on the phone lines. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call if you want to get in touch. But Carl already has. He's in Liverpool. Carl, what do you want to say?
Hi, Julia.
Hello.
All right.
Very well indeed.
Yeah, it's just about, obviously, Keir Starmer giving the nod to Palestine.
That's what he's done. He's given the nod. You're quite right.
Yeah. Well, he's shown his true colours, hasn't he, really? And has once again shown what he's about, rather than supporting the British people, taxpayers, and cleaning up our streets, cleaning up the capital and all the cities, and getting rid of all the migrants. He's chosen them to support a terrorist group.
Yeah.
It's not.
I mean, that's
the guy is an absolute lunatic.
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, again, and again, he said only a week or so ago he wasn't going to do this, and now he's doing it because there's pressure from backbenchers. It's like, I mean, you know, if every single caller on this show and every person who tweeted me, texted me, was telling me I was wrong about something, I mean, I would question, but if I formed my opinion based on the facts, unless someone could present new facts that change my view, I wouldn't change my mind. He seems to change his mind, like, you know, like every half hour with the wind blows.
Yeah, he's very flip floppy.
Yeah.
I haven't got any nice words to describe him, Julia, other than I mean, we know it's for the Muslim vote. He's trying so hard to make sure they stay in power at the next general election. That's what this is about. But it's also, he's turning his back on the country, on taxpayers, the British people, by doing this. The majority of the British people, we don't recognise this. We're not going to fall in line with this decision. You know, what's happened over there. We just want our country to be safe.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to prioritise.
Yeah, everywhere else.
Yeah, you can't sort out what's going on in the Middle East, this intractable problem for many, many decades or even hundreds and hundreds of years, if you can't even sort out potholes here.
Exactly.
Yeah, Carl, thank you for that. So appreciate your call. Thank you. Let's talk to Robert. He's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Julia. I'm a little bit confused because 2 weeks ago we was being told by the government that Hamas are a proscribed terrorist organisation. And now they're accepting it. You know, he wants to accept it as a state. And I'll be honest with you, when I watched David Lammy last night...
Oh, well done, you. Took one for the team.
I almost stuck my fingers down my throat. I mean, I'm not being... You know...
I struggle, yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, this is... he had a chance there. If he's going to recognise them as a state, then he had, which I disagree with, but he had an opportunity there to put some concessions with it. And what he should have done, at the very least, is demand the release of prisoners.
Yeah.
Like
again and again, ministers and cabinet ministers have been on air since, and they've said, and they've been asked repeatedly by interviewers, so those are the conditions on Israel, the ceasefire, getting aid into Gaza and accepting a two-state solution. What are the conditions on Hamas? They always say, well, we've always said they need to release the hostages and they can't be part of a future state. So is that a condition? Well, we've always said, but they won't say it's a condition on Hamas.
You see, you've got two wars going on at the moment. You've got the one with Russia and Ukraine, which is a land grab, but the one in the Middle East, it's biblical. The Jew and the Arab have hated each other for thousands and thousands of years, and it will never stop. It won't stop in our lifetime, But the only thing is they take everybody with them. And that's the trouble. I do believe that probably Israel do go a little bit heavy-handed at times, but when I think back to October the 7th, no, they don't. So it's very...
I always say to people, what would you expect our government to do if we'd had the same attack on us and we were surrounded by countries that, a terrorist organisation running a country or a piece of land where their main aim in life was killing you and every single person you know? I just don't. I don't know what we think. I mean, it's just when we were taking on ISIS, we were taking on Al Qaeda. I'm sorry, there wasn't all this concern about we have to look after the innocents. I'm sorry, there wasn't any concern about that at all.
Well, you see, and the thing is, a lot of it's our own doing because some of these wars that we've got involved with in the Middle East have created a vacuum. They always create a vacuum. It doesn't matter where it is, and it seems like we're always picking up the bill for it. Now, you know what's going to come next with us recognising Hamas,
Palestine as
a state. We're going to get lumbered up with a lot more migrants. You can see what's going to happen.
It's only a matter of time. And again, if they think the British people are unhappy now, good luck with dealing with that. I mean, people made it very clear when the Syrian migrants were flooding across Europe and Angela Merkel opened the door to them, and they've massively regretted it, and they know what a terrible mistake that was now. But David Cameron who's castigated in the media for not opening the doors to more than, I think it was 5,000 a year maximum, very well vetted. But the British public were very much behind him. Robert, appreciate your call. Thank you very much indeed. Going to take a very, very quick break. First up, though, we're going to tell you about Coldplay. They are back at Wembley this summer, and we have got a huge VIP prize up for grabs for one lucky listener. We're giving you the chance to win 6 tickets and a private box for you and your mates on August the 22nd. Full hospitality, plus we're chucking in 10 grand spending money completely tax-free. Here's everything you need to know.
10k for Coldplay. Play 10k cash for Coldplay with 10 grand in your hand tax-free plus 6 super hot tickets to witness Coldplay's sold-out Music of the Spheres tour from a VIP box at Wembley Stadium on August 22nd. Tickets, top tunes and 10 grand cash. Don't panic. Enter to play 10k for Coldplay at talksport.com/win and get ready for the feel-good gig of the summer for you and 5 mates. 10k for Coldplay is a joint TalkSport Limited competition run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio. See talksport.com for terms and conditions.
10k cash for Coldplay.
18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word Wembley to 83338 by the 4th of August at 11 p.m. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission or send your name and number by post to Coldplay Competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 7th of August. This is a TalkSport Limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com/win.
I'm always worn out at the end of that. Philip Ingram. Well, hopefully, do you want to go along? Because if someone wins, they get the extra 5 tickets as well themselves. So
yeah, invite us.
If they've only got a couple of mates, hello, Philip and I'll come. Anyway, good luck with that. 11:33 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be hearing more from Philip Ingram, but also going to be hearing from Fleur Hassan-Nahum. She's the Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy about what was announced by the Prime Minister yesterday, Emmanuel Macron the other week, and indeed Mark Carney in the last 24 hours in terms of recognising a Palestinian state. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:34 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's welcome our next guest now, Fleur Hassan-Nahum. She's former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Now she's Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy. Very good morning to you, Fleur.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Right, well, I just want to get straight down to it. We've had our Prime Minister he's following Emmanuel Macron. Now we've got Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister of Canada, basically saying they want to recognise the state of Palestine. Various different conditions or no conditions on various different parties. What do you make of the decision of these 3 G7 countries, serious countries, saying we want to recognise the Palestinian state?
Well, I don't really understand what they want to achieve. They want to recognize a state that they don't know what the borders are. They don't know who the leaders are. They don't know what it's going to look like. And it doesn't seem to matter to them. The main thing is making this declaration, which is probably being done for their own internal political reasons, and not to make anything better anyway.
Oh, we lost the line a bit there. We've just missed you just for a second there. But this is the thing, a point I've been making all week. I'm not quite sure how this helps anyone on the ground in Gaza. Part of this is a condition from Keir Starmer that, look, if by September, by the UN General Assembly in New York in September, Israel has not agreed to these certain, conditions involving aid to a two-state solution and the like, and a ceasefire, that then they will recognise the Palestinian state. But there were 4 conditions, specific conditions on Israel, not a single condition on Hamas in terms of releasing the hostages and them agreeing to a ceasefire. What did you make of that?
Well, it's absolutely ridiculous and very unfair. So imagine, instead of asking Hamas and taking the opportunity to even ask all the Palestinian leadership to renounce violence, renounce a violent curriculum in the educational system, maybe encourage leaders of the Palestinians that believe in living side by side with Israel. Instead of doing this in a constructive way, they've done it in the most destructive way. And I'll tell you what the most dangerous thing here is, Julia, that they've now given Hamas an incentive not to release the hostages. Because what are they saying to them? They're saying, if you just hang on in there till September, we're going to announce a Palestinian state, which is a diplomatic win to a terrorist group, and not come to the table and not do a ceasefire. They've done the counter incentive for a ceasefire. If he would have said, if you release the hostages and if you come and do a ceasefire, we will declare a Palestinian state in September, at least that would be a little useful. Yeah. But he's done it. It's counterproductive to releasing the hostages.
But even then, even in that case, even if there were those conditions placed, and to be fair, Mark Carney of Canada has actually put those conditions on some democratic reform. I mean, neither the two constituent states of what would be a Palestinian state are in any way democratic. Even if they did do that, there's still a win for Hamas because they will still have basically achieved something that they weren't able to achieve before, which is this international recognition. But the reality is Israel has offered the two-state solution repeatedly, and it has twice been something that's been negotiated by international bodies. America, Britain, France, other serious countries have been massively involved. The Palestinian authorities, whoever's in charge of them, have been offered the two-state solution. They have turned it down. The reality is they, just like Benjamin Netanyahu, he wants a one-state solution because he doesn't believe it's viable. I know lots of Israelis want a two-state solution, but the people in charge of both Gaza and the West Bank don't believe in a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution that involves taking the whole of Israel.
They never did, Julia, and I think that that's the big mistake. People think this is a territorial conflict. This is not a territorial conflict. It's not about giving this piece of land or that piece of land. This is an ideological conflict. In 1947, as you know, the Palestinians were offered a state. They said no. In Oslo, 3 times, they were offered 97% of the West Bank. They said no. We left Gaza, as you know, in 2005. That Gaza Strip could have been the pilot Palestinian state, and they turned it into a terrorist enclave. Who on earth wants a satellite of the Islamic Republic of Iran in the middle of Israel? So what is Keir Starmer actually proposing? Which it leads me to believe that this is all performative. This is all to quell the left flank of the Labour Party and the Islamists in Parliament, and this is what this is about, because they're bringing nothing useful, not for the Israelis and not for the Palestinians.
Well, yes, and this is part of the issue, isn't it? It's both meaningless, and of course, when Macron made his statement that Donald Trump, when he was over in Scotland, so I mean, it doesn't really matter what he says; it's irrelevant. It's both meaningless, but it does give succor. We know that Hamas welcomed this, but we also know that hostages, including the British-Israeli released hostage Emily Damari, who spent months and months in the tunnels and spent weeks in a cage with other girls, including other women, including an 8-year-old girl, for weeks and weeks on end, in a 2 metre by 2 metre cage, held like an animal. She had her fingers shut off. She had a horrific ordeal that she's been through. And she says this is shameful. This is immoral. This is shameful what the Prime Minister has done.
Absolutely shameful. It's even more shameful that last year the Labour Party put through in Parliament a call for a ceasefire without even making the hostage release a condition of that ceasefire, when there was a British woman, Emily Damari, in the tunnels. She only got out at the beginning of this year. So she spent almost a year and a half in those tunnels. And it wasn't even a condition when the British Parliament decided to call for a ceasefire.
Okay. So where do we go from here? Because the reality is, Israel is winning the actual military ground war. You have, you've taken on Hezbollah, you've taken on Iran, taking on Houthi rebels. You've been taking on part of some of the Syrian forces, taking on the Hamas forces in Gaza. We've had those latest stats from the health ministry, i.e. the terrorists in Gaza, saying 60,000 deaths. We know at least 20,000 of those will be terrorists themselves, and apparently we're supposed to be weeping for them. I'm absolutely thrilled those people are all dead. Frankly, I think the world is a better place and it's better for the Palestinian people. But you're losing the propaganda war. You are losing the diplomatic war. More and more people, particularly younger people, who get their news from TikTok, but even anyone who's actually an avid watcher of BBC News, Sky News, ITV, read a lot of the mainstream newspapers in this country, they would think that you were the aggressors, that you were the people in the wrong, you're the genocidal maniacs, not Hamas. What are you doing wrong?
Well, I have a lot to say about this because I fight within my own country. I don't think the Israelis have understood that we're actually in a hybrid war. The hybrid war is both military and is propaganda. People ask, how on earth could the Holocaust have happened? And one of the reasons why the Holocaust happened is because Joseph Goebbels put a radio in everybody's house and told the German people for 3 straight years that the Jews were responsible for all of their problems and all of the problems of Germany after the First World War.
We've got the BBC doing that now for you.
BBC, you've got Al Jazeera. They were both as bad as each other, and lots of other news channels. And it's because really the woke mindset is running the media, the mainstream media, and because the woke mindset is running it, so they can't see Israel or Jews as anything other than oppressors, rather than the fact that we were the ones attacked. In fact, we are the most oppressed people in human history. But, put facts aside, somehow we are now the colonialists in our own indigenous land.
But we don't get the facts. So again and again, I will see on news websites and see in news reports, 6 o'clock news, I'm obsessed, I watch rolling news all the time, where another report that IDF soldiers have shot at innocent civilians trying to get food from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. We've got aid agencies, we've got British doctors working in hospitals in Gaza who are saying this has happened. Everyone is saying it's happened. There's not a single piece of footage of it happening. The IDF say we're not aware of it happening, but the world believes, and certainly everyone under the age of 30 apparently, and everyone working at the BBC believes, and cabinet ministers who claim they have seen the footage. Well, it's not available on the internet.
It's not.
For some bizarre reason, there's not a single person of the 1.5 million phones that are in Gaza that has actually managed to film any of these massacres that apparently take place. But why does Israel allow that claim to be made when you could disprove it? Why don't you make sure that there are cameras, drones constantly monitoring everything so you can disprove these lies the way you've been able to disprove lies about certain other events? For instance, like the attack on a hospital, the missile attack on a hospital early on. Why don't you help yourselves by fighting the propaganda war as well as the military war?
Because the Israeli government doesn't have a media strategy. It's something historical. It's something that I fight against. It's something that whoever's listening to me here, I try and fight to create something like a strategy. It doesn't exist. And I think that for the first time ever, it's actually affected our ability to persecute the military.
Well, it is, because it's affecting British foreign policy, French foreign policy, Canadian foreign policy, and crucially, it's even affecting Donald Trump and American foreign policy.
Yes, because it's all about the visuals. And Israel doesn't, exploit its own people for the sake of a story, the way the Palestinians do. As we saw this week, they took a poor child with a congenital illness. And the New York Times and the Guardian, and of course, all the usual suspects said, oh, this is starvation. Forget the fact that his mother looks pretty well fed and the brother next to him also looks pretty well fed. No, they take a sick child who, by the way, at the moment is in Italy receiving treatment for cystic fibrosis. But don't let the facts fool you. It's a big propaganda campaign with a lot of money behind it from very bad actors like Qatar, Julia.
But as you know, a lie has already travelled around the world before the truth has got its boots on.
Absolutely. But we're always on defence.
I don't think that everything that the Israeli government does is right. I think there are motivations for Benjamin Netanyahu because he's facing corruption charges if he steps down. He's got the right-wingers in his government, in his coalition. I'm pretty sure there will be IDF soldiers who, like soldiers in every single army, in every conflict that's ever taken place, who have done things that are wrong, and action needs to be taken. But the perception that the world is getting is that Israel is a government and as a military that is genocidal, that is deliberately targeting children, deliberately starving children to death, and targeting hospitals, targeting homes, and that is going to lose you the long-term war.
I know, and I completely agree with you. We need a better strategy, because the truth is on our side. There's a very, very insidious propaganda campaign, which is very well funded by Qatar, Al Jazeera, by these so-called journalists in Gaza who are all part of Hamas, they're all terrorists, by UN organizations, which is infiltrated by Hamas, by the terrorists. And unfortunately, we're on the back foot on the media war. And like many people like me, take it very seriously. And unfortunately, I still haven't managed to convince the powers that be that this is a war like any other, that we're already in the middle of a third world war, which is the free world against jihadi Islamism. And part of that war that they're winning is the media campaign. And they still haven't taken this seriously. And the only reason I'm still hanging on in there in politics, Julia, is because that's what I want to change.
OK, really appreciate you joining us. Fleur Hassan Nahum, Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy. Listening to all that is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. What do you want to say?
Yeah, well, a couple of big things come out of that. The first one is the performative, domestically focused stance in there. We have to remember that Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana have set up...
Who? Are they still a thing?
They're still a thing. They've set up this no-name party. No names, Keir Starmer. But they've set up this no-name party that's garnering an awful lot of support in the extreme left of what would be traditional Labour ground. And Starmer is quite
pro-Hamas party.
But Starmer's quite clearly scared about that. And that's why I think his motivation is to come out with a statement when he has done.
Yeah, but it won't be enough to placate them.
No, it's not enough. And the second thing in there, and it's interesting about the information domain. Democracies have real difficulty in being proactive in the information domain because our politicians are scared and they don't recognise the interrelationship between what's happening at a strategic level and how it affects things at a tactical level on the ground with the military. In the same way, in this country, our government has banned our defence chiefs from speaking in public on the record. That's shocking. We are not at war. There's a lot going on. But they've banned our defence chiefs, who are four-star generals, admirals, air marshals who know what they're talking about.
Exactly. Very interesting. Love to hear your thoughts and reaction to that interview. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk to Amy Gallagher. She's a former nurse at the Tavistock Clinic, which was the major transgender clinic for children who believed or were told wrongly that they were born in the wrong body. And she's going to be talking about a major new study that's actually going to look at the long-term impacts of being a child who has been identified as believing they are trans. We'll talk about that up next with Amy. This is Talk.
his backbenchers basically are demanding recognition of Palestine. His frontbench team are not able to deliver that. They get a lot of earache and ear bashing from their backbenchers. He's done this just to tick the box of saying to his political party and to his cabinet and to his deputy prime minister that are all campaigning overtly against Keir Starmer, he's basically had to sort of appease them. And, he hasn't done it once. He's done it before on many other issues. That guy's not a leader. He's literally just following what his party wants.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Thank you so much for your company. We're coming up to 11:52. Let's talk right now to Amy Gallagher. She's a former NHS nurse. She worked at the Tavistock Clinic, where, of course, that was the major trans clinic for children. And she's also now a commentator at the New Culture Forum. Very good morning to you, Amy.
Hi, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, tell us about this brand new study, because this is amazing, almost like a world's first, the world's largest study of its kind, looking at children, thousands of children who've been referred to NHS gender clinics for their belief that they believe that they are born in the wrong body and are trans, and actually looking at their long-term outcomes. First of all, why has this not happened before?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's in keeping with CAS's recommendations that there needs to be more research into how best to treat children who are presenting with gender dysphoria. And it does seem to be, from what I've read, more in keeping with the watchful waiting method, which is that you don't immediately affirm that a child is transgender. You look at them holistically, you look at their family life, their history of trauma, you look at whether they're autistic or not.
Yeah.
Or, you look at them as a whole, as opposed to just affirming them and saying, yes, you are trans.
Yeah, I think I might be. I've seen something on YouTube. I think I might be trans. I think I'm born in the wrong body. Oh, OK, yes, we're going to change your pronouns and you can dress how you want and we're going to play along with it, and then we'll take you to a clinic and give you some puberty blockers and set you on that train, and then we'll cut off your breasts or cut off your bits. And that's basically what was happening for 10 or 12 years, wasn't it? And the parents were often told, railroaded into it by being told, well, better a trans child than a dead child because they're more likely to commit suicide if you don't affirm. And that horrible emotional blackmail meant that a lot of parents kind of went along with this and supported it because they just wanted to keep their child alive. But actually, the Cash report basically debunked all of that. Absolute nonsense.
Yeah, it does seem as though it's definitely a move away from that, which is positive. I mean, my concern is still this idea that we have these designated gender clinics, that we've got one in Bristol, one in Liverpool, one in London, and there's 5 more that are going to be set up. To me, if a child is presenting with distress, anxiety, depression because of their body, they don't need a specialist gender service. We know how to treat.
Well, also, who by definition will look at trans as the number one thing.
Exactly. It's coercing the family and the child to think that gender, this idea of gender, is the most important thing because you're at a gender clinic.
Yeah.
As opposed to, let's look at why you're anxious, why you feel uncomfortable in your body, why you feel depressed. And we do have lots of evidence on how to treat depression and anxiety and distress in children. And we know that a very large proportion of children who say that they are gender dysphoric will grow out of it.
Yeah.
That's why I worry about labelling it still as a gender issue.
Yes, as opposed to a mental health issue, which is how we used to deal with it. But this is the key thing. The vast majority of particularly girls who claim that they believe that they are trans actually just simply turn out to be gay. Maybe they grow up in a family where they feel that's something they can't be open about, can't be honest about. And also a huge percentage of boys and girls who seek out claiming that they were trans are actually on the autistic spectrum. A huge number have been abused. They've had some sort of major trauma in their lives. There's so many explanations for why they're unhappy, but also the evidence is very clear where they have bothered to look for the evidence that actually a lot of these children, once they're on the puberty blockers, once they've got gone through surgery or carried down that route are no happier, because it turns out that's not the solution to their problems. It's a different thing. And I think it was really interesting, the Cash report. I mean, again, she didn't really say anything that wasn't already known by anyone who paid attention, and people like you who've been working in this and, you know, were whistleblowers on this issue, was that, you know, they all these claims about puberty blockers and affirming people, young people who say, even a 3-year-old who says that they think they're a boy when they're a girl, you know, why on earth would they even know what that was? There was no follow-up. They didn't follow up even like 2 months later, let alone 2 years or 20 years later. So they had no idea how well or badly this had gone.
Yeah, there's no follow-up research. We have very little evidence, which is why Cass recommended that we do that. But now, you know, I'm very nervous about what this research will look like and what it will be like. And
really?
We do know that the government are rolling out autism assessments for all children that present with gender dysphoria. So I think that's very positive. And this study will look at how, you know, children that are autistic develop differently to children that are not. So I do think there are some positives in this. My concern also is that there's going to be a slight overlap with this study with the clinical trials for puberty blockers. So some of these children in this study may well be put on the trial for puberty blockers. And that's my big concern, because personally, I don't think there should be a clinical trial for puberty blockers.
We've had a clinical trial. We gave them to loads and loads and loads of children for years on end, and it's been done internationally, and it's been a disaster.
Exactly, it's been shown to cause many harms, and it's been shown that it doesn't really help with the distress anyway. And I just as a common sense, I don't think we should be blocking the puberty of healthy bodies. I mean, you don't really need to be a doctor to kind of work that out.
And it's very similar to me. It's, you know, we're talking about a mental health issue. You know, gender dysphoria, believing you're born in the wrong body doesn't mean you were born in the wrong body. An anorexic who believes that he or she is massively overweight and needs to lose weight, we don't go, yeah, well, let's help you go on a diet to lose more weight. We don't affirm that. Why on earth are we affirming, you know, the gender dysphoria?
Exactly, it's totally wrong-headed. If somebody is feeling in their mind that there's something wrong with their body, if you then block their puberty, you're essentially agreeing with them. You're saying, yes, okay, let's change the body.
Yeah.
So to me, I don't really need a trial into puberty.
No. Oh, it's totally immoral, and also it's going to be used by the people who are the fanatics on this issue, to actually just always put everyone on the trial. I think it's good news that we're actually at least going to have a long-term study. All of this, again, you'd have thought an awful lot of this would have changed sooner. Anyone who looks at the facts couldn't possibly support the drugging and mutilation of our children, and yet so many people still think they're the good, nice people who are doing that. You've been a fantastic voice on this, Amy Gallagher. Thank you so much for joining us. Philip Ingram, this is one of those stories that always just gets me in the stomach. This is just moving too slowly, this.
Oh, far too slowly. I can write the conclusion of the report today, and the conclusion of the report will turn around and say that, you know, giving children puberty blockers, mutilating their bodies, carrying out child abuse against vulnerable children who have got mental health issues or
are simply gay,
or other conditions, or simply gay because they have difficulty.
This is the worst
fitting into society.
Trans treatment is the worst homophobia you can possibly imagine.
Will have caused them long-term harm, and that's the conclusion. That's what it's going to come out with.
Yeah, I know.
We know that today.
Exactly. I mean, for goodness sake, you know, when a child is young, you're not allowed to even give them, you know, too much Calpol or more than half a paracetamol, because it has to be tested because we're unsure. But no, let's give. I mean, we've had the clinical trial went on for plenty of time, did it not? Thank you very much indeed for that. Up next, we're going to take a quick break for the news, and then I've got a very big treat for you. We have the American conservative commentator Ann Coulter on the show. She's going to be live in the studio. She's the author of 13 New York Times bestsellers. She's also the writer of the Substack Unsafe. She has an awful lot to say on every issue under the sun, not just in America, but internationally as well, and particularly on that man he was visiting earlier this week, Donald Trump. I can't wait to get her thoughts on Israel as well, and her thoughts on Keir Starmer, our wonderful, wonderful Prime Minister. Do stay tuned. You do not want to miss that.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. There's going to be a lot of common sense in the next hour. Do stay tuned. Delighted to say Philip Ingram, MBE, a former senior military intelligence officer, is still joining us. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's great to have your company. Great to hear from you as well. As I said, cannot take calls because of contempt of court on that Manchester airport attack verdict involving one of the brothers and 3 of the assaults, because we're going to have likely another trial. I'm really sorry we can't do that. That's the law, folks. But I do want to hear your thoughts, in particular on still talking about the recognition of the Palestinian state. Some of Britain's top lawyers, former Supreme Court judges, top KCs have written to the British government. They've warned Keir Starmer that recognising a Palestinian state risks breaking international law because, well, there isn't really a state. Who would be in charge of it? Where would it actually be? Kind of basics that you might think might need to be there before you recognise a Palestinian state. You could probably recognise Narnia as a state before you recognise Palestine under those criteria. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate, and texts, of course, cost the standard network rate message. We're going to be talking more about that recognition of Palestine. Also, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney following suit. At least he actually had the decency to put some conditions on Hamas and not just on Israel. But we're also going to be talking later in the show about the White House warning Keir Starmer to stop threatening American big tech companies amid mounting backlashes over Britain's online safety law. And we're going to be talking about the latest figures from the ONS, showing that immigration has fueled the 2 biggest annual rises in the population of England and Wales since the Second World War. Our population grew by more than, wait for it, 700,000 people in the year to June 2024. Nearly 62 million people. It's the second largest since records began in 1949. Almost entirely down to immigration. Plus, middle-class households could face higher energy charges than poorer families. Why? Well, because Ofgem want to help cover the cost of net zero. But why should people who've worked hard and paid their taxes have to face higher bills for the same commodity just because they've done well in life? Well, we'll talk about all of that because it all comes down to our old friend net zero, doesn't it? Anyway, all that coming up. Do keep your calls coming in. I'm delighted to say right now, joining us in the studio, myself and Philip Ingram, is, well, a very big name from the world of American media and political thinking. Ann Coulter. She's an American author. She's writer of the Substack Unsafe, the huge Substack, has to be said. Also the author of 13 New York Times bestsellers, including In Trump We Trust, 2016. You've rather changed your view since then, I think. And Resistance is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind, published in 2018. Both very big bestsellers. Ann Coulter, very big welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thank you.
You're over in the UK for a couple of weeks. You know, you come over, you know, at a time when our country is obviously doing really, really well. Everything's working brilliantly. We're highly influential on the world scene, and everything's going fine. Just as an American who keeps up with, you know, world affairs, international affairs, what do you make of Britain's place in the world right now?
I still consider it the mother country. I think it's magnificent. You are so much better off than my country is, especially with Nigel Farage on the horizon. I was just saying I've been doing a casual poll I've been here almost 2 weeks at this point, polling everyone, and I told him yesterday I'm pretty sure it's going to be unanimous for Farage. But I mean, I think this is the most beautiful country, and London, it's stunning how safe and clean it is. I'm constantly gasping at this. I can't understand why anyone would want to wreck this country.
Well, it would appear people people do. I mean, again, I think a lot of people who live in London who've had their phones stolen or are dealing with the problems of other crime and just antisocial behaviour. Well, isn't it interesting? You know, on our streets, perhaps latest crime stats: only 1 in 20 muggings in this country were solved in the last year. We've just got an 86% rise in crime on our streets in the last 10 years. A lot of people would feel rather differently about our city.
Well, yeah, and I mean, as in our country, it all goes back to immigration. You bring in the third world, you get the third world. That's why I wrote in Trump We Trust. That's why I was a little testy with the president during his first term. But I got to say, since you mentioned that, I finally got the president I voted for this term. Very interesting.
Now, very interesting having Donald Trump over here. He was obviously opening his new golf course in Scotland, but he gave our Prime Minister some advice in terms of what he needed to do to take on Nigel Farage. And I'm assuming that poll, you say, a lot of people would be very supportive of Nigel Farage. He talked about how he was his friend. And he was saying it was, you know, lower taxes, lower energy bills,
send the boats back,
send the boats, and immigration. Do you think that was and remains the key issue for Donald Trump voters?
Yes. I think it is across the world. It's a winning issue. You know, I think your country is probably the same in this way. Politicians run, and first they get their base, so they have the nomination, and then the story is, and then you have to moderate so you can get the independents. The one thing you never moderate on, if you want to reach across party lines, is immigration. You get Democrats, you get independents, you get the immigrants themselves. That's an issue you.
Well, you get legal migrants and recent migrants, and of course they, are invariably the people who are hardest hit by waves of illegal migration. You know, 10 million plus people coming over who will work for lower wages,
and they fled their countries for a reason. Why turn America into Uganda? They left Uganda. They left Mexico. Yeah. No, that is a universally popular issue. And I mean, interestingly, in 2016, I don't know how much this matters over here, but Bernie Sanders was the hardcore progressive candidate running against Hillary Clinton, the establishment Republican. And once it was Hillary, I spent a lot of the election year convincing the Sanders voters that they had to vote for Trump because they agreed on more things than Hillary. They agreed on trade. They agreed on no more stupid wars. And they totally agreed on immigration because the true leftist position is to care about, allegedly, the working class. And those are the ones who are being absolutely slaughtered. And who benefits? The rich. They get cheap maids and cheap nannies.
Oh, I've been making this point for years. I live in North London. There's, you know, they say the lanyard class, you know, because people, again, who benefit, you know, you say cheap nannies, cheap cleaners, cheap gardeners, cheap dog, you know, got the dog walkers, everything. And they are, you know, not having to pay so much for your coffee when you go to your Starbucks or your Pret. All of that, you know, your fruit being picked cheaply, so it's not so expensive in the supermarket, and big business benefits from it because they can pay for lower wages. Why do you think it's interesting, the parallels, you know, the Democrats in America and the Labour Party here, currently in government, but again, I think most people say it was a loveless landslide back in July last year. It was people not voting for the Tories or voting for reform instead of the Tories, and that kind of let Labour come in. Why do you think both of those parties, purportedly representing the working man and woman, why do you think they've abandoned the people who were what they were supposed to represent?
It's utterly baffling to me. I mean, I was shocked and appalled by Boris Johnson.
In what way?
He was very much like Trump term one. The people, and this has been going on, I don't know how long. Well, you haven't had the votes coming that long. It was basically after the end of Gaddafi.
Feels long enough.
Yeah, oh yeah, plenty long enough. But Gaddafi had been holding them back, and then Hillary had the great idea to take out Gaddafi, and that's when the votes really started coming to Europe. So thank you, Hillary Clinton. But in America, these votes have been going on 20 years now. Every time there is a vote, whether it's benefits for illegal aliens, schooling for illegal aliens, deporting.
Do you put them up in 4-star hotels like we do?
Why, yes, we do. But my point is, the people are always voting against immigration. They are always saying less immigration, and the politicians will not give it to us.
Why not? Why? We've had that here. We've had it across large swathes of Europe as well. And the voters, and again, voters are not, even if they're not voting for the new upstart parties, the AfD or Reform, they are saying again and again in polls, again and again, and they're often the manifestos of the major parties are promising to deal with these issues, whether it's legal or illegal migration, saying, yeah, we'll take it all down, we'll deal with it, stop the beds, smash the gangs, we will get back on top. They never do it. Why don't they do it?
I think what we were just talking about, it is the donors, it's the rich, it's the elites, it's the fancy people in the media, no offense, who are all on the other side of the people. I wrote Adios America, which I do think influenced Trump's immigration policy quite strongly. And, as I said in that book, I've never seen an issue where you have the people so much on one side and the elites and the politicians directly opposed to them. I mean, at least on things like, abortion, gay marriage, global warming, you can get the other side. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't, well, what the heck. Fox News is our conservative station in America. Yeah. Rupert Murdoch pedaled to the metal for open borders. Yeah. That's the conservative voice. So, Wall Street Journal, open borders. So you had, me, Matt Drudge, Stephen Miller, and about 5 radio hosts against the entire world until Trump came along.
And the interesting thing is, I think you've had a similar debate, I think, in America as we've had in Britain, perhaps sooner in America, where anyone who was saying we need to sort out the borders, we can't have illegal migrants, we also can't have a level. I mean, America is a nation that's built on immigration.
No, it isn't.
Okay, explain why quickly.
It was founded by mostly British settlers in the 1600s.
They were immigrants.
No, there was no America to immigrate to. They created America. Okay. We're not living in Navajo Nation. We're living in the United States of America, created by British settlers. Thank you very much, by the way. They were fantastic. Dutch came, a few Germans, and basically until 1970. That was it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. And 10 to 20%
and then you've
black.
had the massive, yes,
but they're not immigrants; they are settlers.
And again, we've had the mass immigration since about probably around 2000. That's when it started under Tony Blair. The debate has moved on though, because anyone raising issues about that, and I was raising issues about it very early on, and you just were called xenophobic, bigoted, racist, every name under the sun. The left, the middle, the centrist dads, we call them here in America, in Britain, are still using those terms. They're still shouting that at everyone. They do it to Nigel Farage. They do it to Donald Trump. But it doesn't really hold any water anymore. People are saying, you can call me what you want. I don't care anymore. What do you think changed?
Absolutely. Well, in our country, absolutely everything under the sun being called racist, including now this American Eagle ad, because for the first time since George Floyd, a pretty blonde was used in an ad.
Saying she's got great genes.
Which is, by the way, how I write inscriptions in a lot of my books after I've met the person. Anyway, what I find, I mean, it's always been a BS statement. I would think, particularly in the case of Britain, you're the first country, every country's had slavery, to actually stop slavery. Yep. We lost 600,000 men to end slavery. We were buying the slave. I mean, it's the only African institution our country has ever adopted, slavery. But it's particularly insane in what we're talking about with immigration. The left engages in this mass transformation of the nation faster than any demographic change in world history, and all we're saying is, we don't like what you've done. Yeah. Racist.
Yeah, and maybe the speed and the scale at which you've done it. I mean, it is very interesting that, and again, a lot of the ways that the debate has been stopped by is, mainstream media simply not having that debate, or if you shout racist to people, they get too scared to say it. But it has a way of bubbling up, and we've certainly seen social media, and we've certainly seen Elon Musk buying X, and that had a massive, massive impact on the ability to discuss a lot of crucial issues, and he exposed a lot of, what was going on in terms of pressure on issues, things like lockdown. Now, I know that you, along with Donald Trump, have issues with our new Online Safety Act. Everything is always about safety, always about safety for the children. Every control on any nation is always about safety for the children. Right. What are your concerns about that?
Well, I'm already not being able to see things on Twitter. You know, I went to Nigel Farage's press conference the other day, and that's when I found out about the Safety Act. One thing, he was taking all these questions from the press, and I sort of harangued them on my way out, saying, this is the mother country. You're the press, and you're saying, oh, what about the children? What about the oh, come on. And they kept citing Molly, so I asked about Molly, read something online.
Molly Russell, yeah.
Got bullied. There's always been bullying. This is like, I don't know, maybe you guys have fallen for it, but this is like blaming the gun when someone commits a crime. No, I think the crime is the criminal. That's the issue here. Somebody who commits suicide, there are a lot of reasons to commit suicide. There has always been bullying. It's like banning the telephone because one girl called up another girl and bullied her.
Yeah, so you see, this is basically a sledgehammer to crack a nut and probably tackling the wrong issue.
And it's, yes, and shocking that immediately videos of, there was this big fight at a Cincinnati jazz festival, race-based, and it was all over Twitter. People are texting me, emailing me. I get back that night, try to search for it on Twitter, and I want to see it. I want to see it. There are videos all over. Every time I get to a video, I get a little warning that because of the Safety Act in the UK, you can't see this video.
Yeah. And
it's
again,
unbelievable.
Unless you verify your age, but again, then you lose your ability to look at things. People are just getting VPNs. That's what they're going to do.
Yes, I guess I'm going to have to.
The 14-year-old boys are seeing porn. They've got VPNs. The parents don't know what a VPN is. Yeah. They're going to get, as is always the case. Let's talk about the other big issue that's in the news today. Obviously, Israel. America has huge influence over Israel, a major supplier of weaponry and diplomatic support. Certainly, we are seeing the support for Israel sort of just dissipating, slipping away from many other countries. We've seen France, now then Britain, now Canada, where their leaders have said we will recognise a Palestinian state, even though we had a warning from lawyers actually today saying actually, it's not actually possible. You don't know who's going to be in charge, where the borders would be, or who the people are. What do you make of where we are with Israel and Gaza right now, and Donald Trump saying that he wants Israel to give more aid to the people in Gaza?
What's happening in Gaza does look pretty bad, and I think a lot of people, including Israelis and members of the IDF, are a little freaked out by it. The one thing I'll say is I've always admired Israel's policy on immigration. Man, they don't put up with any immigration, and I admire their policy here. I wish Trump would imitate him, as long as he's going to be Israel's biggest buddy and best buddy to Netanyahu. Why don't you imitate him? Because what seems to be happening is you have October 7th, at least in America, you have all these outrageous genocidal claims from the Palestinian side against Israel, from the river to the sea, just outrageous statements. And meanwhile, Israel is, we just want the hostages back, as they're basically committing genocide.
You think Israel is committing genocide?
And do the other.
You think Israel is committing genocide?
That it's hard to say that that's not the intent. I mean, some Israeli...
it is. I mean, you look at the facts, they're clearly not.
And look at some of the ministers have recently
we've got a couple of extreme ministers in the...
but they're actually government officials as opposed to some...
They're not in charge of the war. They're not defence minister, or they're not running the military. They're not actually... They are coalition members.
A lot of
But you know what genocide means. That's a very strong word.
Okay, Noam Chomsky says never use it. Take away the word. Wow, they're killing a lot of Palestinians.
Are they?
And Palestinians
are they killing a lot of Palestinians?
Losing.
Are they killing a lot of Palestinians?
But meanwhile, it's Palestinians who are using the genocidal rhetoric.
Yeah.
And I think Trump should follow it. Just keep saying, yeah, I'm following the courts. I'm doing whatever they want, and just keep the planes flying, keep the mass deportations going, keep them going, keep them going.
Finally, I must ask you, what is your advice to British voters in terms of you feel happy that you got the president that you wanted and that was delivering the policies that you and again Trump actually has never been as popular as many of his policies, interestingly.
That's right.
The policies that people want. What is your advice to British voters, some of whom, I think I'm included in that, probably Philip Ingram as well, tearing our hair out at the way we have been governed, not just for the past year under Labour, but frankly the past 20 or 30 years?
Well, talking to the cab drivers, I think they could give me advice. But yeah, I mean, it's all a problem of immigration.
Does everything come down to that?
Immigration solves it makes everything easier. If it doesn't completely solve it, housing, the expenses, the social safety net. So for one thing, get rid of the ones who aren't actually legal here, just mass deportations, it's a beautiful word, and cut off social benefits. I mean, it's madness that anyone is coming in. When I worked for the Senate Judiciary Committee, we had a welfare reform bill. The one provision said, if you are an immigrant here, you can't depend on the government for the first 5 years only. And I was looking at this thinking, most Americans would be shocked that you can immigrate to a country with your hand out, give me housing, give me food. No, if you can't be self-supporting, stay where you are.
That's the advice. Right, absolute pleasure to have met you. Very interesting. I'd love to hear people's reactions to what Ann Coulter has had to say. American author, writer of the Substack Unsafe, a huge sub. Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, David Jones. Enjoy lovely, rainy, cloudy London.
I like it rainy.
I'm sure you will. I'm going to get Philip Ingram's thoughts on what she had to say in just a couple of moments and to hear from you as well. Give us a call 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
His backbenchers basically are demanding recognition of Palestine. His front bench team are not able to deliver that. They get a lot of earache and ear bashing from their backbenchers. He's done this just to tick the box of saying to his political party and to his cabinet and to his deputy prime minister that are all campaigning overtly against Keir Starmer. He's basically had to sort of appease them, and you know, he hasn't done it once. He's done it before on many other issues. That guy's not a leader. He's literally just following what his party wants.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. 12:24 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram sitting in the studio listening to that conversation with Ann Coulter. What did you make of her?
Wasn't it fascinating? What a fascinating lady. I'd love to sit down and have a proper conversation with her and all the rest.
Yeah.
Her views are interesting, and I'd like to challenge her on a few.
Yeah, exactly. I don't agree with her on everything, but I'd love to get her in a room with Keir Starmer.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Exactly.
She's very. I do like to meet people who are very clear-cut in their views. Even if you disagree with them, they know what they think and they've looked into it, and that is where they stand.
I enjoy people who disagree with my views because, especially if you can sit down and have a good debate with them, because it actually might change your mind. The old saying is, if you never change your mind, why have one?
Yeah, exactly. Two bits of breaking news. One, nurses have threatened industrial action after having a ballot. They've rejected the 3.6% pay rise they've been offered. I know, I'm completely shocked to learn that after nurses agreed to a pay rise way below what doctors got last year, and doctors have been on strike for 5 days asking for the whopping 29% rise that, I mean, no sane government could give them. They feel a little bit hard done by, having got an awful lot less, as will other health service workers, as will other public sector workers. Because here's the thing, if you give a massive whopping pay rise to train drivers and to doctors and you don't to everybody else, they're going to be a bit knocked about it.
Did we not say whenever the government came in, is if you roll over and give everyone their pay rises and call that solving the problem, they're only going to come back for more.
We said it, and they have.
And they have.
I mean, again, remember, West Streeting, I mean, whether it was about dealing with stopping the boats or dealing with the NHS strikes or any of the strikes, West Streeting was going to just sit down, he was just going to sit at the table, he was going to talk to the doctors and the nurses and everyone, he was going to resolve it that way, talk to the train drivers, the Transport Secretary, the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, everyone. They were going to be talking to the EU and France, and they were going to solve everything. Not a single thing has been solved, because it turns out just sitting down and talking over the Garibaldis doesn't actually resolve everything.
Well, and they fail to recognise that the last government had sat down and talked to everyone and tried to do things. You actually have to do something.
Well, I'm sure there's some quite narky messages from Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary. The BMA said, we're happy to return to the table now we've finished our strike.
And
he said, he said, well, I've been there the whole time. You know, but again, you know, you've used up my goodwill. Well, we're going to be exactly in the same circumstance we were in under the Tory government. The difference here, though, of course, is they've lost the public support. They have absolutely lost the public support. And there's also an element where we don't really notice. OK, there's been a lot of other news, and Trump was in town, and I get that. However, the doctors' strike has not been front page news, and it wasn't the last few times when they were on strike. And the reason why is because people are so used to the NHS being hopeless and waiting a long time. It's not a story anymore to people.
Well, and a lot of the junior doctors didn't actually follow the strike instructions. But the one thing that's going to happen here, and you heard it here first, is that the unions who are getting upset, they've just ejected Angela Rayner from her union membership and all the rest of it, are going to go, right, here's an opportunity to send this new government a very clear message. So we're going to come into a winter of discontent where this is the start of an awful lot going on, and therefore we will be affected by everything that's going to hit us.
Absolutely. I need everyone to hold on to their hats right now, because this is going to make you really, really angry. Other bit of breaking news. This is Lord Kempsell, Ross Kempsell, previously our political editor here. You might remember him asking Boris Johnson ahead of the 2019 election about, buses and the like. He's now a peer. He worked in the government, now a peer in the House of Lords. He asked in Parliament how much it's costing the taxpayer to fund the flights on those secret Afghan migration routes. OK, so actually to bring those people over here, a lot of those are clandestine flights. And we know quite a few thousand have already come here secretly. Others, I think they were cutting it, or they were cutting off. But the answer, oh guys, seriously, the answer is the average total cost to date has been £457,833.33. So basically £458,000. Wait for it. Per month. This is an official answer from the government. So in 1 year, you're looking at £5.5 million of British taxpayers' money spent bringing those people to this country. And we know since that first emerged, these are not all Afghans who were helping the British forces and had a right to be here. A lot of these were people who had no right to be here whatsoever. There's some big question marks about whether some of them are actually Taliban plants. And they have come to this country. Of course, it's not just them. It'll be their families, often their extended families. Some people bringing in, a dozen people. And we have spent, in 1 year, and these flights took place, I think, for a couple of years. So on average, per month, 458 grand, you are looking at basically 11 million pounds being spent on those flights. And that's just the flights, not just them living here.
Yeah, but you know where this money's coming from. It's coming out of the defence budget. So
well, that's good, because it's making us safer.
We've had the Chagos payment up front, which is billions. We've got this is costing us out of the defence budget. So this supposed increase that the Defence Review gave, that's going to give defence more money. No, defence has had a cut in this first year of this government.
But that's okay, because there's no wars. There's no war in Europe we're going to have to deal with, and there's no prospect of any war. China invading Taiwan.
And there's no threat to us.
No threat to us from terrorists. Everything's fine. So we don't need to defend ourselves.
And we're not getting battalions of military-aged men coming across our beaches.
I think everything's absolutely fine. I think the summary of this show is everything's fine. Keep calm and carry on. I mean, genuinely, I'm just going to read that out to you again, because I just missed it. Seriously. The government has basically just admitted that we are looking at basically £4.5 5.5 million pounds a year was spent on these secret Afghan migration route flights. Just the flights. Should we take a break? No, let's not take a break. Let's go to the phone lines. 0344 499 1000. Oh, she's my favourite. You know I love it. Georgina's on the line in London. Georgina, before you launch into whatever it is I know you want to say about the Palestinian state recognition, your reaction to those figures we've just had on those Afghan flights.
Well, I don't usually drink at this time in the day, but I'm telling you, I'm going to have a very large gin and tonic when I get off the phone, Julia.
It's mind-blowing. These numbers are mind-blowing.
Well, what's mind-blowing is the fact that Keir Starmer is allowing this to happen, and it's the very people who he should be protecting who are paying for this.
Yeah, well, no, but it was the Tories. This happened under the Tories. It was agreed under the Tories and kept secret under the Tories.
They need a lashing as well, honestly, and I'm just a woman to do it. I'm at the very limit of my last nerve with Starmer. We're paying for the privilege for this absolute madness. This man has political dementia. Julia, this is nothing but dirty politics, and all for the sake of the Muslim vote. It's going to have long-reaching ramifications, both economically and with our foreign allies. This man and his motley crew are supposed to be ambassadors for both us and our country, and I'm ashamed to be tainted by association, by his actions. He's made us look totally untrustworthy and weak on the global stage, and it's totally contradictory to what he said only a few weeks ago. This man believes in nothing. He has no interest in either Britain or its indigenous inhabitants. The wheel is spinning with this man, but the hamster is most definitely dead. The next thing we know, we will have an influx of Palestinian refugees.
Yeah, of course.
And this has serious implications for our national security and will crush our already dying economy. He needs to use his time sorting out the already festering social and financial chaos here in Britain, instead of trying to be all things to all men in his global bubble. Where is it going to end, Julia?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Every single word, including the gin and tonic at the end of it. Georgina in London, thank you very much. Philip Ingram, final say?
I don't need to say anything. Georgina said it all.
She always does.
She's summed it up
Honestly,
for us
we
perfectly.
need to put Georgina in charge.
Well, exactly.
I just want to get her in a room with Keir Starmer.
Yeah. Oh, wouldn't that be fun?
It would just be beautiful.
Yeah.
It would be beautiful.
Exactly.
That would be the greatest thing on earth. That really would. 12:33 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking about, well, yes, again, migration crisis, legal and illegal. And we're also going to be talking about why net zero means that if you've done well in life, you worked hard, you got a good job, you're earning a bit more than the average, you're probably going to have to pay more for your energy bills. Why? Because Ofgem want to, cover the costs of paying for everyone's bills because of net zero. Another reason why net zero is not a good thing, as if we needed another one. That's all coming up in the next half hour. Do give us a call. Let us know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, welcome back. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just that breaking news. The Royal College of Nursing, they had a ballot over there accepting a 3.6% pay offer. And what a surprise. After doctors got 22% last year and train drivers got a whopping, was it 15%? Doctors been out on strike for the last 5 days asking for 29%. They decided not to accept that pay offer. I know, what a complete shock. They'll be the first of many public service unions, I think, who will be saying, no, we'd like a bit more. It's worked for the doctors, it might work for us. We'll be talking about that, no doubt, for many months to come. And also that astonishing figure revealed in a parliamentary question from Lord Kempsell, Ross Kempsell, as previously of this parish. He asked a question in government about how much it's costing the taxpayer to fund those flights, those secret Afghan migration routes, and the answer is absolutely staggering. The average total cost to date is basically £458,000 a month. Those flights took place over a 2-year period. We are looking at £11 million likely bill just for the flights. Just for the flights for these Afghans who've come to this country, many of whom are not people who were helping British forces. That doesn't even account for the accommodation, all the help, welfare, housing, you name it, everything else that they are going to be getting when they have arrived here. Astonishing revelation. Your thoughts on that? Very much welcome. 0344 499 1000. Right now, let's turn our attention to, well, many different kinds of migration. Let's talk to Gavin Rice. He's the head of political economy at Onward. A very, very good afternoon to you.
Hi, Julia. Good to be with you again.
Thank you very much for joining us. Look, let's talk about legal migration as well as illegal migration. We have got some extraordinary figures out from the Office for National Statistics yesterday, and we mentioned them very briefly on the show yesterday, showing we have seen a second bumper year, record year of mass increase in our population, almost entirely down to immigration. Talk us through those figures.
Well, what we've seen is the population rise at a record level for the second year in a row. And the figures that were reported this morning were that the population went up by 700,000 in the year to June last year. These are absolutely unprecedented figures. But I actually think to understand just how unprecedented they are, you actually need to look at the broad sweep of the history of immigration to this country to realise just how unusual they are. So if you look at immigration prior to 1997, in the 24 years before that, when Tony Blair came to power, net migration was only 18,000. Subsequently...
on a year?
No, the total. Whereas if you look at what happened,
the total number of people who came into this country over the people who left, the net migration to this country for 24 years in the period up to 1997 when Blair was elected was just 18,000 people.
Precisely, because we only really get significant net migration after the EU accession states come along and the expansion of the EU eastwards under Tony Blair. So the total amount of net migration in the 24 years after 1997 is over 5 million. And then just from 2021 to now, so only 4 years, it's 3.4 million in what increasingly is being called the Boris wave, because it's the new migration rules active from 2021 onwards. So it's not just the annual figure, it's the scale of sweep up.
I mean, exponential is a word that does need to be used. We often overuse that word. And this was the thing, because again and again, 2010, 2015, 2017, 2019, and again, 2024, voters have said very clearly, again and again, they would like immigration, legal immigration, to be cut. Boris Johnson clearly got the message in 2016 with the Brexit vote, and we weren't saying what we'd not like is more Polish people, what we'd like is the whole of Pakistan and Nigeria to turn up on our shores. I mean, it was quite bizarre and indeed perverse, that Boris wave, where they basically handed out, as far as I can tell, a visa to pretty much anyone who wanted to come to the country, most of whom actually were low-paid, low-skilled migrants.
Or indeed not working at all. So the idea was to introduce a more selective, more controlled immigration system focused on high skills.
Points-based system that Australia had. Yeah, you're an engineer, we need engineers, come on in.
Right, exactly. But first of all, the salary threshold set for the skilled worker visa was extremely low at first, only 26,000, which is below the average salary and not enough to be a net contributor over a lifetime. And secondly, migrants arriving since 2021 on the skilled worker route are only 5% of the total.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of people coming under the migration rules we've had since 2021 are actually not here for the purposes of work
Yeah,
at all.
Or they're the spouses or dependents, and dependents, you know, by definition, not working, not contributing, and the vast majority of those skilled migrants actually often aren't, not vast, but a large number are not actually earning above average incomes, and therefore they're not net contributors, because you have to be earning pretty much well above average income in this country to be a net contributor tax-wise. It is mind-blowing, isn't it? Look, but at least those are the people who've gone through the right system. They've applied, they've been accepted. You know, all credit to them if they want to make a new life in another country and improve their lives and their families' lives. More fool our authorities for thinking that they're going to be a benefit to the British people. But then you've got the illegal migration. We've seen yet more, is it 900 people? I've lost track. You know, 900 this day, 400 that day, coming across on the boats from Calais. Border Force spending the time, as far as I can tell, just ferrying people to this country. And we've also got more and more concern about illegal migrants and where they go. We've had the concern, you know, in Epping at the Bell Hotel, and it's happened across the country, Bournemouth, Norwich and elsewhere, where local people have been protesting for weeks now about people being housed in hotels. We had Isabel Oakeshott, international editor, her revelation of a 4-star hotel where people are living in, you know, 4-poster beds and, you know, getting 3 lovely meals a day and cleaners and goodness knows what, and getting freebies from the local council. And people are up in arms about that. Latest, we've got thousands of people who packed the streets of Waterlooville. They're just north of Portsmouth, down in Hampshire, and they've had anti-migrant protests over a plan by the Home Office, without the permission or the agreement of the council, to move asylum seekers into new flats, 250 grand purchase flat, which are desperately needed by local people. What do you make of the government's policy in this? Because this is a continuation of what happened under the Tories, and people say we don't want them in hotels, and then they move them into, you know, normal accommodation, but that is in competition with local people. The reality is people don't want these people in the country at all.
Yeah, well, I think this is a classic example of the government not really running the government. So they say that they have a policy, which is to stop the boats and smash the gangs, but these are just languages that are used in Parliament or in press releases. The truth is the UK government actually isn't in charge of this at all. It would be extremely easy to stop the boats crossing the channel, where for the Navy and for special forces and so on, you simply turn them around, you take them to a small island that the UK owns or whatever it is, but you do not allow them to come on shore. The problem is any such move by the government would immediately be struck down by the courts under the Human Rights Act, and particularly under our obligations under the European Convention on Human Rights. So the idea that we can just solve this problem on our own, regardless of the international legal structures that we're still in, is simply for the birds, and it's deeply dishonest.
And of course, a lot of people say we just need to leave the European Court for Human Rights and that will solve it, because we've got activist judges and we've got an activist attorney general and a prime minister who agree with them on a lot of these issues. Do you think the British public are going to sort of keep putting up with this? Because I've talked a lot this week about how I think we're reaching a tipping point. The fact that people are actually on the streets, I think it's really important that those protests stay peaceful. In fact, trouble seems to be caused by the police bussing in, you know, the pro-refugee protesters from other areas who are apparently quite happy to have refugees living, you know, in another person's area. But or not, they're economic migrants, let's call them what they are. But do you think that we are reaching a tipping point when the government of whichever hue it is can no longer just pat us on the head and go, there, it's all fine, and then call us racist, and that's just not going to fly anymore?
I think that's right. And this is a case, in my estimation, where common sense has actually been ahead of elite media opinion and even of official statistics. Yeah. I mean, people know that many of the people coming over here are men, not women and children, in their 20s, basically working in the illegal market. I mean, you'll see hotels for asylum seekers with Deliveroo and Uber Eats bags out the back, because obviously they're working in those kind of franchise operations. It's clearly being used as a route to get into the UK. I think people have known that in their heart of hearts for a long time. And I think now the media, you know, and also the political class, late as ever, have finally kind of arrived at that point. I think people are rightly sick and tired of this, and I think something is going to have to be done. My concern is that I just know that every bone in Keir Starmer and Lord Hermer's body is we are going to prioritise our understanding of international law over the democratic priorities of British voters, because that's just the kind of people that they are. And I'm actually quite worried about when, an unstoppable force meets an immovable object here.
That is a very, very good point. But I think the blame will be on the politicians for failing to do the will of the people, which they've expressly been told to do again and again and again in every election. So appreciate you joining us. Gavin Rice, Head of Political Economy at Onward. Thank you for Philip Angram. I mean, do you think, again, he said, the governments, they're kind of either too incompetent or too sort of committed to this idea. They do believe in open borders. Everyone in this government believes in open borders. Whatever they say on the telly, they do. They actually don't really think it's a bad thing that we've got mass uncontrolled legal immigration and mass uncontrolled illegal immigration.
Which is why Keir Starmer has done absolutely nothing to smash the gangs as he promised to do it. And I do think that we are at a tipping point in this country, and that tipping point is going to be crossed by a number of different things coming together as a perfect storm, and they're already happening. It's not just the migration and the failure to stop that, or reduce it, whether it's legal or illegal, but we've got the cost of living going up. We've got a winter discontent potentially from the unions that are coming in, where we've got a government that is doing either irrelevant stuff just to be seen to be doing something, or sticking their head in the sand about the whole issues that there are. This is not a good recipe for this country.
It is absolutely not. And you come from a part of the UK, the Northern Ireland, where when things get bad, it can get very bad.
Yeah, and very quickly indeed. Yeah. And the government needs to wake up and start to do something and start to listen.
But they'll have to go against every one of their political instincts and their they think moral beliefs.
They'll have to change their mind.
I don't think they're capable of doing it. I really don't. 12:47 is the time to take a quick break, and we're going to be talking about why the Reform UK Party is declaring an energy war on Ed Miliband as an eco-zealot, and why if you've done a bit well in life and you've earned a good living, you're going to have to pay more for your gas and your electricity. That's coming up next. This is Talk.
His backbenchers basically are demanding recognition of Palestine. His front bench team are not able to deliver that. They get a lot of earache and ear bashing from their backbenchers. He's done this just to tick the box of saying to his political party and to his cabinet and to his deputy prime minister that are all campaigning overtly against Keir Starmer, he's basically had to sort of appease them. And, he hasn't done it once. He's done it before on many other issues. That guy's not a leader. He's literally just following what his party wants.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:49 is the time. Let's turn our attention to net zero because, well, let's face it, that underpins many of our economic crises that we are facing right now. Let's talk to Harry Wilkinson. He's Head of Policy of the Global Warming Policy Foundation. A very, very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. Let's talk about our energy bills, because they've gone sky high. They're not going up as much. They've gone down a bit, but they are still all sky high. I never don't get my monthly bill and think, wow, right, everyone turn the heating down, stop using the dryers, start behaving. And a lot of people are really, really struggling to pay those bills. Many people in arrears, we know. Now we've got an idea from Ofgem, who is supposed to represent customers, I thought, and our interest. And this is an idea to help, sort of cover some of the costs of our energy bills. And the idea is that those of us who earn a bit more, middle classes, are going to have to pay more for our energy. How is this going to work?
Well, net zero has always been regressive. We've seen subsidies for wealthier households to get EVs and heat pumps, for example, solar panels on their roofs. And as they bought solar panels, for example, or installed heat pumps, their consumption on the grid reduces, and you have to reclaim money through increasingly standing charges, because those customers still rely on a national grid that provides them electricity when maybe there isn't much sun shining on their house. So, that has forced upstanding charges, which is really hurting poorer customers.
Because a lot for poorer customers who, living in a smaller home and using less electricity, they haven't got a dryer, they might not even have a washing machine at home, they haven't got the dishwasher, so they're just simply not using as much energy, they haven't got 5 bedrooms or anything. So they're using less energy, so a bigger percentage of their bill is that standing charge. Just to be connected to the grid, you pay this sum whether you use anything or not.
That's right. And I think there's 2 options here. One of them could be to have that on general taxation, which would be more progressive in the sense that rich people would pay more. And there's even suggestions that there should be progressive pricing in people's bills. So I think that's totally unrealistic. The actual effort to go to administering that would probably outweigh any benefits. And people's circumstances change all the time, and that would be very difficult to administer. But let's get back to the point here. The perspective is all wrong. We could be having much cheaper electricity.
It's like the winter fuel payment for pensioners. The solution is actually for people to be able to afford to pay for energy.
We need cheaper electricity for everyone. We put what's known as the ETS, Emissions Trading Scheme price, on the price of gas-fired electricity, which sets the price of wholesale electricity in the market. That means everyone pays more for their electricity bills than they would be otherwise.
That's where the last unit of energy that you use, you take it from that price, and that always pushes the price. But I mean, that's not something that the international markets require. That's a decision the British government takes.
Exactly.
Why do they do that? Why are we in massive debt and paying huge amounts of tax and right now to pay for that energy subsidy that we all had to have because we couldn't afford our bills in 22 when it went sky high? Why are we doing that when they could actually make our bills lower simply by just adjusting that way of setting the price?
Because they're putting net zero in front of all other considerations, because they're actually about to increase it, because we're about to join the EU's emission trading scheme, which has more expensive prices at the moment than our scheme. So we're about to make things worse. This isn't a government that's listening and trying to get prices down. This is a government that's ignoring the public and saying we're just going to have higher prices because it's more important for us to meet the green agenda than to get bills down.
Were we not told by the Labour Party, by Ed Miliband, the climate hysteria Secretary of State, because that's what he is, that we were going to have lower bills? They were, at one point, I think they said our bills would go down by £1,000. I mean, then there was a £300 figure that our bills were going to go down by £300. They've gone up, not down.
We're going to be waiting a very, very long time before we see these savings. And the reason is we have to just keep building more and more infrastructure to connect up these wind turbines.
Oh, but wait a minute. But when that's all built, when we've got a whole load of wind turbines and the whole of our countryside is paved over with solar panels, then we'll have cheap energy, right?
Well, you would think so. But Miliband insists on paying really high prices for wind energy. In the last auction, prices rose by over 50%. And in this latest auction, he wants to extend those prices to be 20-year contracts, up from 15. So he wants to lock in these high prices for renewables for decades to come. So this is just pushing the horizon out to when we can finally fix these problems further and further into the future.
But again, if renewables were also reliable and affordable, we wouldn't need any subsidies, wouldn't need to do any of this, because we'd all be using it anyway, wouldn't we? Let's also talk about, I mean, very much linked, let's talk about the Reform UK Party. Richard Tice, the deputy leader, he's branded Ed Miliband an eco-zealot, I think not unreasonably, and he's launched what he calls an energy war against Labour, fighting against pylons and solar farms that he says are an eyesore. I couldn't agree with him more. I have a visceral reaction when I drive past beautiful swathes of countryside with massive big wind turbines in, usually not turning, by the way, and basically saying, they've already said, I think a week or so ago, we are not going to provide subsidies. You may not think this is quite such a good market to get involved with, to the green energy companies that are making a fortune right now.
Let's be clear. This infrastructure, these pylons, these turbines, they are a blight on the countryside. But we do need more energy infrastructure. It would be NIMBYist just to say we should not build this if there weren't other alternatives. There are other alternatives. There's cheaper alternatives that we're deliberately making more expensive. And there's cheaper green alternatives as well. Look at South Korea, where they're building very cheap nuclear power stations because they have a much healthier regulatory environment, and they don't have, new nuclear power stations have to actually write hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pages of environmental impact assessments before they can even build a nuclear power station. That costs millions and millions in itself, only to be locked up in a room somewhere. No one's ever going to look at this. This is a pointless bureaucracy factory that's not actually providing genuine safety to people. So this is a disaster, and it's of the utmost urgency that we review these legislative arrangements, because they are holding us back from having that cheap and actually clean energy that people need. And
again, reliable energy could be useful as well. Always so good to talk to you. Harry Wilkinson there from the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Philip Ingram listening to that. It is genuinely painful, a lot of this stuff. But again, this idea that, we constantly try and deal with the wrong end of the problem of high energy prices. Like, we'll make this person pay more or put money. Whereas actually the solution is, why don't we have reliable fuels and energy that doesn't cost a fortune?
Get the energy prices down. We've got the most expensive energy prices in Europe, and that's affecting manufacturing, it's affecting money in people's pockets, affecting defence, everything across the board. It would be easy to get that down. And Donald Trump came up with saying, hey, get the taxes off the North Sea oil, start to exploit that more. Drill, baby, drill, and that's what we need to be doing.
I loved it when he was saying that to Keir Starmer, but of course, didn't like that at all, did he?
No, the body language was brilliant.
No, it was great, wasn't it? Thank you so much, Philip Ingram, for all your wise words throughout the show. We're going to hope for some wise words in the next few hours as well. Ian Collins is off today. Jonathan Gullis is sitting in. Hello.
Hey, Julie, how are you doing, lovely?
Very well. I haven't seen you for a while.
I know. I'm sorry. Well, I need to get I need to bring some staffy oatcakes in for you.
No, we've got this whole thing. He was an MP for Stoke-on-Trent, where my husband's from, and you've been threatening us.
A fine Stoke man.
Well, he's a Stoke man. I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far. He's the one I married. But yeah, we've been meaning to get you two together at some point.
Really, yeah.
You can wish of each other about oatcakes.
The 6 towns, oatcakes, Port Vales, all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, welcome to my life, people. Welcome to my life. How are you? What are you going to be talking about?
Well, look, like you, going to be talking about this madness when it comes to net zero. So apparently Ofgem's going to somehow magically figure out who's able to pay more to pay for net zero, when actually we should just be putting it in the bin.
Way, by the way, I mean, middle class people, you're paying more for your energy anyway, because you've probably got a bigger home and you've got more, white goods that are using energy.
What is it? Progressive billing.
Progressive billing.
Oh, God, what a phrase, progressive. You see that word?
Let's keep punishing people for working hard and doing well.
Exactly. We'll also be talking